we are proud to announce the launch of WrestleCopia brand and the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, which you can find over at www.wrestlecopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, WrestleCopia.com. You may have heard me mention the WrestleCopia brand in passing on a variety of our shows. You might be asking, what is WrestleCopia? Well, the name derives from the words wrestle, for wrestling, and copia, which is defined as having plenty, or an abundance of. It's abundance of wrestling history over at WrestleCopia.com as the podcast network continues to grow with a variety of podcasts. Everything from our show, The Wrestling Memory Grenade, where we take a trip down memory lane to wrestling history's past as we analyze and dissect complete years of wrestling history from your favorite promotions, to Monday Warfare, The Battles Within, an in-depth look and weekly breakdown of the entire Raw vs. Nitro war, to our newest podcast, TR Shocks the World, where host Tom Robinson makes his long-awaited return to the wrestling airwaves. Tom does everything from break down the current product to share inside stories and memories from years gone by. It's discretion advised as TR shocks the world with his strong opinions, hilarious impressions, and so much more. The WrestleCopia News Network is a special feature podcast. You can expect more late-breaking news, timely discussions, and tributes to the fallen legends on future episodes of WCNN. We've also got other podcasts being prepped for their debuts, including a territory-based show we like to call The Money and the Miles. There's an old saying in the world of professional wrestling that nothing in this business is real except the money made and the miles traveled. In this podcast, we discuss the territory era, with shows focusing on everything from show reviews to yearly breakdowns to episodes focusing on some of the rare, lesser-known territories and outlaw promotions of yesteryear that remain an enigma. Stop on over to WrestleCopia.com for all the latest shows and follow us on Twitter at WrestleCopia. That's on Twitter at WrestleCopia for all the latest news and information on the podcast network.
Turn it on and rip the knob off.
Hey guys, what's up? It's that time again. We're back here on the Wrestling Memory Grenade, episode 33. I'm your host, Ray Russell, and joining me, Mr. Steve Eckstadt, getting ready to talk a little WWF, Steve.
Yeah, this is my wheelhouse right here, so I'm ready for it. The good, bad, and the ugly.
I don't know if I would want to take credit with this being my wheelhouse, but hey, man, I get what you're saying. I know this is like your big first full year. You were watching everything, and you got it all in your memory banks. It makes it a lot easier. A lot different from the NWA in '89, but what a tremendous time that was going through the NWA in '89. All that great talent and all those great matches we got to watch and see. So this is a very different era and a very different company here at the WWF in 1993. Everything is flipped upside down. They're trying to reinvent themselves, find themselves really here after the fallout of all the steroid trial coming up and all the big guys on their way out, and some of the names just getting, a little older and moving away from the company. And it's that time to rebuild, I guess. And it's really the first rebuild of the company. You have to think 92, 93.
Yeah, they had a pretty good, 9-year run, from 84 till here. 92 was a disaster financially. There's still some good there, I think. Definitely the changing of the guard. Steroid scandal really kicked their ass. The stuff with like Barry O and those guys, the sexual harassment claims, and they just got a whirlwind of negative publicity, and they kind of started it on their own in '91 with the Iraqi war crap, and it kind of just fell all downhill after that. It's like they made the deal with the devil and it bit them in the ass, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a long road of recovery here, and not only is it just all of the scandals and things, like I said, there's so many moving pieces in the company. A lot of guys had to go, whether it was for steroids or they kind of wore out their welcome, not in a negative way, just they'd been there so long, there was really nothing else left to do with them. It was kind of like, all right, time to build, I need some new toys, pal. And that's basically where we were in 92, and it was supposedly Pat Patterson who wanted to put smaller guys like Bret Hart, like Shawn Michaels on the forefront put some of the weight on their back to carry the company, so to speak. Obviously, they never made the money that Hulk Hogan made Vince in the 80s and going into 90. But it's quite successful for him in the long run as far as keeping the company going. Always knowing you got somebody you can depend on to put on quality main events. But that's a long ways off. We're talking the entire 90s there. And this is really just the beginning. Certainly for Shawn Michaels. He hasn't even been, just now moving into January, he's been a singles star for about a year. And Bret's been not even 2 years, you figure, post WrestleMania 7. It's really interesting to see where we are, and I'm calling this episode Setting the Stage, because that's what we're doing here this week, is we're setting the stage for the WWF in 1993. It may not be the showdown at the OK Corral, but it was the WWF versus WCW, Raw versus Nitro, the Monday Night War, the Ratings War, the NWO, the Attitude Era. While everyone discusses who won the war, it's truly the battles within the war that made this weekly episodic rivalry so exciting. We break it all down, from episode reviews to backstage news to those ever-important TV ratings. It's Monday Warfare, the battles within, exclusively as part of the WrestleCopia brand, available on WrestleCopia.com and all of your favorite podcast streaming apps. To begin things, we have to start right off talking about all of the current WWF champions moving out of 92, going into 93. And it's really intriguing to see when all of these title changes took place, because within the last 2 to 3 months of 1992, all of the champions changed for one reason or another. And it's really interesting because it's like a whole new company, really, when everything just changes all at once. And we got to start right at the beginning. And we go back to October 12th of 92 at a Superstars taping, the match between Ric Flair and Bret Hart, where Bret Hart wins the World Heavyweight Championship. Now, I remember watching that as it happened, not the match, obviously, but that announcement, the weekend of Superstars. And it just caught me off guard. Not saying Bret wasn't worthy of a shot, but he certainly was never placed in that main event position up until then. He wasn't viewed as the main eventer. I'm not saying I would be against seeing Bret in a main event, but it's just odd to see a guy who was upper mid-card all of a sudden beat who, I was trained my whole youth. Ric Flair is not, he's always been a world champion no matter what I was watching. NWA, the WWF, he was a main event star. Macho Man, a main event star from the very beginning as far as I'm concerned. Bret Hart was never built to that. It's like they forced him into that spot because they needed somebody. And I'm not necessarily trying to talk negative, because God, he certainly deserved it, in the future, all the great matches he put on, everything he did. He took the ball and ran with it for the period they gave him here. And it got over for a time. Like, I bought it by, whatever, I can't even say Survivor Series necessarily, but certainly by the Royal Rumble, I bought it. Okay, Bret's the champion. Okay. But when I saw it, I'm like, well, that's weird. Because it's almost like if you went back a few years and Mr. Perfect beat Hulk Hogan, and they just randomly showed it, on Update. And it's what the hell is it? And I'm not, Mr. Perfect's probably my favorite wrestler ever. And I'm not knocking him. But he's never been at that level, at that point, especially. Not so much here. I would have bought it here more than, when he was getting the Intercontinental run. So it's just so weird. When the announcement was made, it was so weird. It's like, Bret Hart's the heavyweight, is this real? And you kept waiting to see what the follow-up was. Like, did he lose it back? Is he losing it back next week? Like, what's the gimmick here? And I know you were younger than me at this point in time, but just over the course of your life, not necessarily what was happening right then. I don't know if that had any, anything on you at all when this happened, but moving forward, further in life, as you got a little older, like, what was your take on, like, Bret Hart, who had never main evented anything in the company, just being, that was the decision, that was the choice?
He did main event SummerSlam, but obviously that was built off the back of British Bulldog in England. So he always says, like, they had faith in him to be able to put on a good match with Davey Boy in England, and it was kind of a test for him. That's what he said. So in his mind, he was more than ready for whatever they were about to give him. I didn't think he probably didn't expect it 2 months later or a month and a half later. But me personally, like, I don't really remember watching much of 92. I remember, like, like the beginning of the year with Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, I was like super excited. And I think a lot of that had to do with where I lived. I live in Indiana, and I'm like 45 minutes away from the Hoosier Dome, or was the Hoosier Dome. It's no longer there, but that just builds excitement as a kid because you want to go. Like it's an hour down the road. Why can't we go? We didn't get to go. And now reading the Observer, it's like, man, you could have got in for $10 at the door if you just went down there on the day of the show. Insane. So I'm just like, man, my parents couldn't even go down there and get us in for $10. But you're trained, mentally, like it's already sold out. You can't get in. It's too late for that. Like you don't know paper and obviously radio contests and stuff like that. But after WrestleMania, I didn't really follow the product and I didn't really care. Like WrestleMania was over, the show left town, and it was kind of it. I don't recall watching anything, but I don't know what that has to do with anything. But when it came to 93, for whatever reason, Raw, I just started watching Raw, even though it was at the same time as Primetime. I never really watched Primetime. So when I started watching it week in and week out, Bret Hart was already the champion, and I was just, okay, this is the champion. This is the guy we got to pay attention to. So that's how I felt as a kid. I was only 6 years old at the time, so I'm not going to know much. But now looking at it, it is awkward. It is definitely weird. It's not what you expect, but when you look at the guys who were champions and look at the guys who beat them, and they all have something in common. Obviously, the natural disasters are big in other ways, heavy, fat, whatever you want to call them. But then you just get all these smaller guys that are taking over the company. And you can tell, like, now, like, the steroid scandal played a huge part in this. And you look around the locker room and all this, you just get rid of all the superhero guys. And who are you going to go to? Savage just dropped the belt. You can't really go back to that. That would have been interesting. Obviously, Undertaker, I mean, who do you go to? And it's like, if you're trying to rebrand your whole company, who's one guy that's been there consistently since, 85 with the Hearts?
I think that's the point I was trying to make without realizing it, is once we get to the roster here, we look at what we have. They had no one, and that's not a knock on Brett. I'm saying they had no other main eventers like a Hulk Hogan or an Ultimate Warrior who just out the door anyway.
Tito Santana.
well, if you listen to Tito, yeah, that's true, and we'll touch on that here. We can touch on that right now. Tito. For those who don't know, Tito's went on record many a time saying that he was the one possibly being groomed to beat Ric Flair for the title here in October and become the new WWF champion. They were seriously looking into making Tito the next WWF champion. I don't need to tell you how ridiculous that sounds. I'm a huge fan of early Tito Santana. I love his other territory stuff, the little that he did outside of the WWF that's out there. I love his early WWF stuff. His stuff with Greg Valentine in the mid-'80s is just absolutely phenomenal. Tito was great even when he was doing, hate to call him a job guy, but I mean, glorified job guy is what Tito was there. 89, after Strikeforce split up for the most part. You always talk about that great bump he takes at WrestleMania 6 off the Barbarian clothesline. It's a great bump. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but there's another reliable guy. And so Bruce Pritchard has said, and you can trust what he says with a grain of salt sometimes, but he remembers things the way he remembers things, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I do believe this. He said, was Tito in discussion? Probably. But so was everyone else. We wrote everyone's name down on a piece of paper and said, all right, these are the guys. So they're all in discussion, technically. Now we have to figure out which one is going to work the best. I'm not knocking Tito. In his prime, he was one of the top guys to go watch. I said, the Valentine stuff is amazing. It's great. We've done a lot of that on Patreon. The old best of the WWFs and some of the other Coliseum video, we've watched a lot of Tito and Tito and Valentine matches. Lots of good stuff there. But to see El Matador as our WWF champion here in the fall of 92, I mean, he's not even cracking the pay-per-views at this point. He's doing I don't even know if he's cracking some of the dark matches here in 92. Funny enough, he does get a couple dark matches in 93. But so it's
in Tito's defense, I will say, like, I read majority of his book, and I got to that point. I think I skipped ahead to get to that because I was curious about that. He did say that they wanted to expand into different markets and in Central America and things like that. So it makes sense in that regard that you put the title on a Tito and he can go to those places and automatically be over just because of who he is. And so when you look at it that way, when they were trying to explain globally to a different direction, maybe that they haven't done a lot of, it makes sense. If you just look at it with, okay, Tito Santana really in 92, that makes no sense. But
well, if the WWF was based just in those countries, that would make sense. Like, for those who don't know, there's a televised house show out there somewhere of the WWF in Spain. And The Undertaker versus Tito, and Tito might be the very, I'm not sure, I'm not going through the old list, rundown of matches from 90, 91, or 91. I would imagine it would have to have been. Yeah, sometime in 91. Tito Santana pins The Undertaker in Spain. Pins him. The Undertaker. And he's Tito, this is pre-El Matador. Pins him with a pile driver. Might have been multiple pile drivers. I don't remember, but he pins The Undertaker. I don't know if he's the first person to do it, but he does do it. It's right there. Televised house show in Spain. It exists out there somewhere, so for anybody who knows how to find it, go find it if you've never heard of that. It does exist. So I'm not questioning their mindset is we know where we are. We know who to put over in this particular region or country or things of that nature. But once we go there like once a year, maybe 2 times a year, depending on what country it is. I mean, Tito's champion's going to sell anything? I don't know. And they weren't big on hot-shotting champs back then either.
No, definitely. It's kind of like Jinder Mahal and the India connections. And, it happened. I know we'll talk about this a lot, I'm sure, going afterwards. But they even put the belt back on Hogan so he can get the European tour in under his belt. So they did do things. Maybe they could have done it for Tito if they had a Spain tour and things like that to where he's a top draw in that area. They could have easily just put the belt on him for that 2 or 3 months while they're over in Europe and be done with it. But that doesn't set your company up for what you want to do going forward. And I think that's why Bret Hart makes the most sense. Perfect's injured quite a bit. He has the bad back. How long is he going to be around? Savage, they wanted to part-time him. So it's like you look around and there's nobody left. And they don't do it. There really is.
It's like, and I think that's why Razor Ramon was forced quickly, and we'll talk a lot more about that, in the next couple episodes, but Razor was forced into the main event, and I'm not saying a guy that looks like that and a guy that, has a great character like that shouldn't necessarily be introduced into the main event, but I felt like they hot shot that world title shot with Bret at Royal Rumble because they had nobody else for Bret to wrestle. Yeah. That's, but we'll talk about the other 2 title changes real quick, and then we'll get into all the wrestlers and things. So Bret wins the world title from Ric Flair, the WWF title, from Ric Flair on October 12th. And the very next day at the Wrestling Challenge tapings on October 13th, Money Incorporated, which is Ted DiBiase and IRS, now managed by Jimmy Hart, defeat the team of the Natural Disasters, who were the champions. They lose them there to Money Incorporated. So again, the belts shift, and part of this is Earthquake's on his way out. Earthquake's pretty much gone by the end of the year. He does come back and work the Royal Rumble match, but he's really gone, technically, and we'll talk about that when we get to the roster and things. But it's kind of odd because we see almost a duplicate reenactment of what happened earlier on when the Disasters turned babyface, where Jimmy Hart's managing 2 teams, and there's only one tag team, there's only one set of tag belts in the company, and that never made any sense to me. But anyways, so the Disasters turn babyface, the Nasties are heels. Now here we are in the fall of 92, and now Jimmy Hart's got the Money Incorporated and the Nasty Boys. So now the Nasty Boys are pissed off. They're losing their tag title shot to Money Inc. So naturally now the Nasties are baby faces. They turn babyface. So they're kind of feuding with Money Inc. following this, giving Money Inc. something to do with the tag belts, and really our only tag team feud here at the end of 92 is Money Inc. and the Nasty Boys. But so Bret wins the WWF title, whatever day they taped the Superstars, and the following day, Money Inc. are now the tag team champions. So things are changing here. And then we move forward a couple of weeks only. God, all 3 title changes in a matter of like 2 weeks' time here. A Superstars / Saturday Night's main event taping, and I remember watching this match. This is pre-internet. I remember watching this match and having no idea who was going to win it or that Bulldog was on his way out or any of this stuff. So when Shawn Michaels, my favorite wrestler here in 1992, loved the character and just the way he, what he wore and Cherry and all this great, everything just was perfect for the character for me. And I just thought it was so cool. So he beats Bulldog for the Intercontinental title on October 27th. So in a matter of a couple weeks, basically all of this airs or is announced by the end of October, early November. Actually, Saturday's main event aired something like November 22nd. So it was going right into the Survivor Series.
Yeah, it was like 2 or 3 days before the Survivor Series.
Yeah. And so we have all new champions heading into the Survivor Series pay-per-view, which is crazy. We've never seen all those titles change hands like that all at once like that, on every one of them on a different taping, though. And now we got all new champions moving into 1993. And I was curious, your take, like, Earthquake's on his way out, so we know the title's got to change, but apparently they thought the Nasties already held the belt, so we needed something fresh. I have it's not a conspiracy theory. It's just, I noticed something as it was happening. I never see it mentioned online. I've never seen anybody else discuss it or think, or I don't know. You tell me. I think the original idea for not necessarily Money Incorporated, but a tag team with Ted DiBiase was actually the Repo Man. Because if you go all the way back to Survivor Series Showdown 91, who helps Ted DiBiase beat Virgil for the $1 million title? The Repo Man, out of nowhere. It made no sense. And they teamed up a few times.
Yep, Tuesday in Texas
against Tito and Virgil. And a couple other times, I think, on Prime Time, maybe even a rematch of that match. But yeah,
I think it was.
And then it just kind of went away, and they were like, "Yeah, let's give him Irwin, let's give him Rotunda, because Rotunda's, just more well-rounded wrestler, I would imagine." And it made sense with the DiBiase character too. I thought either one made sense. Repo Man, this guy's got money, whatever. He's the benefactor, whatever shit. So it was really interesting. So they went with IRS, and the rest is history, as they say. But I never was a big fan. I loved DiBiase. I was never a fan of the IRS character. And, we just did a year's worth of Rotunda matches. And sometimes he was really good. Sometimes,
here we are again.
Snooze City. Yeah, we get to sit through this. But unfortunately, his IRS, it's almost always Snooze City. Unless he does the clothesline. Once he does the clothesline, and then he's right back to the chin lock. So.
Well, we do get him with the kid. So that's not bad.
No, that's not too bad. Other than I'm still scratching my head as to why he won that match.
But, yeah, same here.
But so I was just intrigued, like, your thoughts on the Money Inc. team.
I thought it made sense. You get the tax man and you got the man with all the money. But when you look at it now as an adult, it's like, if you have all the money, you don't want the tax man around. So in that sense, it's like, he's getting audited. They're auditing people, so DiBiase can benefactor from it, like you said. It worked for me. I never really had an issue with him. The problem is there's just nobody else around to even have a decent feud with. Obviously, we get the Mega Maniacs, and we all know how that was going to turn out. Like, there's no way Hogan's going to lower himself to the tag titles. So that was kind of a waste of time. And then DiBiase's pretty much wrapped up and done by the end of August. So I think if IRS would have came into the company and went immediately with DiBiase, I think it would have been decent, because you still had some decent teams around a little bit, not much, very little, but you still had some. You could have had a decent feud with Virgil and Tito. So it's just the pairing. Like, they didn't really have anything for DiBiase, and you look at the other side of your ledger here. There's really nobody there he can feud with. That would make sense that he hasn't already feuded with. And IRS has done nothing since he came to the company, so you might as well just give him something. I thought they were good heels and everything. That's the theme of 93, is just there's some decent dudes on top. You got like one or two guys that are decent on top on each side of the ledger, but there's really no one there to feud with them. That's why you get some shit. But and then Shawn Michaels, yeah, he was ready. This didn't feel rushed. I think. You throw somebody through the window and you beat Tito at WrestleMania 8, whatever the hell you want to call that crap at SummerSlam with Martel.
Two of my favorites of all time, and that's the match we did.
I know, it's so bad. Yeah, two of your favorites back to back, SummerSlam, and they're duds. But
yeah,
I guess that's the way it goes. But I felt like, though, even though he was getting like chicken crap and turning into chicken salad. So it's like, I think he earned it, and he was ready. Like, I don't know who else you're going to go to in that situation either. But out of the three teams, Shawn, I think, was the most believable taking over the title from when he did. The only thing that was abrupt was the Bulldog. It's like he just got it. He got this big, huge London win, and you felt like he was going to be a champion for a while, but obviously steroid scandal said otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I remember sitting there. Cops was on the TV show Cops. It was still in infancy. It was early on still. So we're 92 Cops. It was a big show back then, and we were sitting, me and my cousin was staying the night over at my house, but I think specifically to watch Saturday's Main Event with me. Like, we were going to hang out and enjoy this, and Al Bundy's hosting it and everything, which you don't see on the network version. They edit out all the Al Bundy Married with Children inserts where he opens the show and does the little bits in between the matches and things. It was interesting hearing Ed O'Neill say Papa Shango and things like that. So, but I just remember that was the match. All year I was like, man, Shawn Michaels needs a belt. I don't remember if I want him to be Intercontinental or even heavyweight champion, delusional me, here in '92. But like all year, now it's just 1 year, but for me, it was like an eternity, I guess, because I'd seen Shawn Michaels for so many years. And I was a bigger Jannetty fan for several years, like the early years of the Rockers, much bigger Jannetty fan than Shawn Michaels. But in singles, I was a fan of both. Didn't really care. If Jannetty beat Michaels, that didn't piss me off. But Michaels was probably easily my favorite in singles because he just had more personality and so much going on, with his character and things. But yeah, when it was a surprise to both of us, but we were both excited because he was one of our favorites. My favorite probably here in '92 in the WWF. So when he fell on top of Bulldog, the finish was kind of like, oh, wow, I didn't know that was going to be the finish, but I accepted it. We were like jumping up and down, excited and stuff. Made us forget all about the fact that in the TV guide it says Ric Flair was going to wrestle the Big Boss Man, and they, didn't fit on the show, whatever their original plans were to put on this show. I think that made it to a Coliseum video, but it was like 5 minutes, and Boss Man did the job, and so it was really ho-hum. But yeah, it was huge. I was excited. I was so happy. It was weird going to Survivor Series, watching heavyweight champion versus Intercontinental champion, watching Shawn. It wasn't for the heavyweight title, but it was a heavyweight title main event match, so to speak. So it was like, well, that felt out of place, a little weird, but it wasn't Hogan Warrior, Like Warrior was ready for that. Like people bought that shit. But that was a hell of a match.
This is rushed.
Yeah.
This is rushed. Everything
feels rushed. I don't know if it's rushed or just unplanned shit. It's like this is the first time like some of the stuff felt. Planned. Absolutely. So that's where we are. We're moving in here with all new champions, new things we had never really seen before. Bret Hart, who had never main evented, so to speak, like full-time main eventer. Shawn Michaels, who's got his very first singles title. And then Money Incorporated have the belts, once again from the Disasters, with a little help from the Head Shrinkers. So it looks like we're supposed to have a Disasters Head Shrinkers feud coming out of that title change, but it doesn't really happen unless it happens for a few weeks on the house shows, because like I said, Quake's just about out of there, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. We're going to talk about the rosters. And for anyone interested, I actually posted a picture of the rosters, a breakdown of I by tier, so main eventers, upper carders, mid carders, the lower job guys and things of that nature, tag teams, managers, heels, faces, things like that. And I posted that on Facebook. I've posted that on Twitter a couple times, and I'll do it again. And for anyone interested, you can grab this, just like all of my other show notes, over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. And I think just for $2, you can get the show notes. So if that's all you're looking for, there you go. We can start from the top and work our way down here. We're going to talk main event first because it really sticks out like a sore thumb, Steve. And I don't know if you can see this or not, but it's a scary sight, really. I mean, I can't make excuses here for this at all. Here is your main event, your main eventers as of right now. You have Bret Hart, who is the WWF champion. And when you hear the name Bret Hart, for anyone young, they're like, oh, Bret Hart's always been a star. But for anybody who lived this, you realize this guy's been a main eventer for 2 months going into 1993. So you have Bret Hart, okay? And you have the Macho Man, which is a huge name. But he's a part-timer. Vince is trying to put him back in the announce booth, which you'll see on Raw, which you'll see on Superstars as we move into 93. So he's pulling Macho Man off the road, so to speak. So Macho is a main eventer, but he's really not even going to be working that often moving forward, other than to put over Yokozuna and things like that. So and then you have The Undertaker, who, for better or worse, is more of a gimmick and doesn't necessarily need the belt, which, unfortunately, he's pegged with a lot of bad feuds and opponents for the next several years, but probably his worst of all, and I think he's made this a point to say many a times, is the Giant Gonzalez, who, is, by everyone's account, was a really, really great guy, really nice guy, but I don't need to tell you, from his in-ring work. So we're sitting here with Bret Hart, who has been main eventing for 2 months. Randy Savage, who is no longer really even on the road, but I'm trying to be nice here, and I have him listed because he does actively wrestle, sometimes in 93. Yeah. We have The Undertaker, who's really more of a gimmick. He's not made to be the champion here at this point in the company. And I wrote, by default, Mr. Perfect is kind of in the main event discussion. To me, he seemed like, and I understand Brett won the belt before Hennig had to come back and replace the Warrior. So, at Survivor Series. So I don't know that Hennig would have gotten the belt if things had, happened a little earlier, but it just seemed by Rumble time, he was the most over babyface from what I saw.
It explodes the night after the Rumble too.
Yeah.
Like,
and
they just him next level.
Yeah. And it just never, I don't understand what happened there. What went wrong?
Like a Pat Patterson thing, Brett and Shawn have always been his boys, it seems like, from all the reports. And, WrestleMania 12 was his baby and things like that. So it just makes you wonder if Pat had all the stroke.
He wasn't stroking Mr. P, huh?
No.
He wasn't stroking that P anyway.
No, but it just makes you wonder because Mr. Perfect's just as good as Bret Hart in the ring at this point, and he was over. They're kind of forcing Brett, and he did get over to an extent, but Mr. Perfect was that organic, natural, oh shit, he just turned face on Ric Flair and Bobby Heenan. Like, that shot him to the moon. I'm with you, man. I think if the problem is he had to finish the feud with Flair, but if Warrior left at the beginning of October, he could have done that real quick. And who knows? Brett and Shawn could have been for the IC title. Then you had Mr. Perfect in the main event, tagging with Macho, going against Flair and Ramon. Flair leaves, and then you can get to Mr. Perfect and Razor Ramon at the Royal Rumble because it made sense. If Warrior left, a month earlier than what he did. Yeah,
if it only had failed his test just a month earlier.
Yeah.
So this is where we are in the babyface main event scene. We got Bret Hart, who is, as far as main eventer goes, really hasn't proven himself yet. You have Randy Savage, who's no longer a full-timer even in the ring. You have Undertaker and Mr. Perfect. Now, we know Hogan's coming back, so you can kind of slide him in there, but he's not here. So at the end of 92, we have almost nothing. And then on the heel side, we have Razor Ramon, who's kind of forced into the main event here. And I'm not saying, again, just the look alone, okay, but I just feel like they rushed he went through everything too fast. He could have been built up a little more so he wasn't doing jobs so fast. Oh, I'm not arguing that.
He got the rub with the Flair and Macho feud and things like that. So when you look at it just like that, it does make sense, but it does stink that you're setting this dude up to basically be a jobber, a top heel jobber, because there's no way you're going to drop the belt that quick. And what's Ramon done to even show that he needs it?
Yeah, and it's funny too because Razor pinned Bret Hart on a house show I went to, extremely shortly before Bret won the belt, within a week or two. Because when Bret won the belt, I go, oh my God, Razor Ramon pinned him with his feet on the ropes. I remember this. I think it was maybe the old Bret, where Bret comes out running off the ropes under the crossbody and the heel floats over and puts his feet on the ropes, like DiBiase did without the feet on the ropes at Survivor Series 90, something like that. But he pinned Bret, and it stuck in Scott Hall's mind. It must have been the only time he actually pinned Bret. Because I remember on an episode of, at least for the next year, Radio WWF, he said, somebody said something about him wrestling Bret Hart. He goes, I beat him once, and he said where and everything. I kind of marked out. I go, yeah. So it might have been the only time he actually pinned Bret Hart. But it was right before Bret got the belt. So that stuck in my head. That made Razor even another notch higher for me because I'm like, hey man, I saw him pin Bret Hart and whatnot. So, but anyway, so you got Razor there, which is fine, but he's been in the company for 4 months or whatever at this point, at least wrestling for about 4 months here. Yokozuna, who it just really debuted, I think in November. So even though he's being groomed for the Royal Rumble win, he's really not anything at this point. We don't know where he is on the card. You can look at him and go, that guy's got to be in a main event.
You knew.
At the same time, I mean, he's brand new. We know nothing about this guy. So
he's good though. 2
of our 3 guys that are in the main event in the heel slots, they've been in the company 2 to 4 months at this point. And they're unknowns. I guess I knew that was Diamond Stud immediately when I saw him. Yokozuna, I'd never seen him before. I probably saw him as Kokina in the AWA on ESPN at one point, but I didn't connect it. In fact, I remember reading an After magazine. I didn't even put 2 and 2 together when he debuted, because I remember reading an After magazine maybe a couple months after he debuted, and it said, Samu and Fatu, the SST, are coming into the WWF, and along with a 3rd Samoan. I didn't. I just kept waiting for the third Samoan, Steve. Where the hell's this third Samoan?
He's Japanese, man.
Yeah, so he was Polynesian when he started. So
right.
It could have been anywhere.
Polynesian Islands, Polynesian Islands there. But.
So we got Razor, Yoko, and Flair, which is he's on his way out because the story goes Flair is contracted to the WWF until September of 1993, but if he sticks around, Vince has already told him he's going to move down the card and kind of do like semi-main event, maybe even mid-card stuff, moving forward after the Royal Rumble and the Mr. Perfect feud. Basically, he's going to job to Perfect to build Perfect up for Lex Luger, and Flair's going to move down the card. And Flair was told when he joined that if he was ever unhappy, he was going to be able to leave. And he basically told Vince, "I don't want to be, an under the main event card guy." Rightfully so here by this point. I know he's already 42, 43 maybe at this point, but he could still go. And so there it was. He was on his way out of the company post Royal Rumble, as you know, the Raw with Mr. Perfect. So Flair's on his way out. So our only main eventers are Yokozuna and Razor Ramon at this point. And those are great names, but they're brand new to the company.
Historic, like now they're great names, not in 93.
And that's what people got to understand, the context of everyone here. We're talking about this particular time period. People didn't even know what a Yokozuna was. Some people may not even have seen him here by the end of 92. He'd only been on TV for 2 months. Like
1989, all those guys were already established. There's no question that where they're pegged in,
right?
They belong there. Here, this is a whole new ball game for pretty much everybody. Like, I don't know if people understand the significance of the steroid scandal and what exactly happened, but they essentially fired or people quit. 75% of their roster between October and February, March of 93. It's pretty much a whole new roster, a whole new ball game. And
I think over the course of 92, a lot of guys were gone. Warlord, Hercules, Barbarian. This is early.
Snuka.
92. Yeah, a lot of guys.
A lot of guys were gone. And it's like, this to me, like, this would be the perfect company to want to wrestle for if you're a young pup and you never really had a chance, because you're looking around and all these big stiffs that took all the spots are gone. And now it's your turn to step up. You just hope they call your name, put me in, coach. That sort of idea. So, yeah, it looks bad, and money-wise, it's probably bad as far as drawing. We all know that, especially for this time. But if I'm a Bret Hart, if I'm a Razor Ramon, if I'm a Shawn Michaels, like, I'm loving this because the guys that you're better than are gone, and now it's your turn. And there's nobody there to really hold you down.
Yeah, most of them were successful.
Keep on trucking. Keep on trucking, and you're going to get your opportunity. And that's one of the reasons why I like 92 and 93. I'm not saying it's the best stuff. It's definitely not. It's far from it. But it's cool seeing different guys. Like, if you watch WWF from 87, 88, 89, whatever, it's the same guys all the time. In 92, 93, you get all new guys. You get different matchups that you haven't seen for, 5 or 6 years. And it's a lot of fresh stuff, no doubt. Yeah. I'm not saying it's good, but it's just cool to see those guys get their opportunity. Like, this is the foundation for the great careers of Bret and Shawn and Yokozuna and some of these other guys. They solidified their careers in 93, and that's really neat to watch.
So as I look at this main event thing, as we move on to the upper tier guys, I see Bret, who's an unestablished main eventer here as far as the end of 92 goes, but I mean, he does well with what he does. So it's cool and all, but we got Bret, we've got The Undertaker, we've got Mr. Perfect. On the other side, we've got the brand new Razor Ramon, brand new Yokozuna, and Ric Flair, who's leaving in less than a month here, January of 1993. There's really no main event scene whatsoever. We know Hogan's coming in. We know Luger and Giant Gonzalez will be in here very shortly as well, both at the Rumble, in fact. But, I mean, really, just looking at this is the most depleted main event roster maybe in the history of the company up until this point.
Up until this point.
Yeah. Not talking about the 2000s or anything, but
95 takes the cake.
Yeah, that too. I didn't even think of that. So we move on to like the upper mid-card type guys. What does that mean? Well, I just kind of threw some names in here. Tatanka, obviously still undefeated. He's getting that push. He's getting that intercontinental level push. Certainly thanks to thanks to Shawn Michaels, really, when we get to that story. But we know Marty Jannetty returned on Halloween. Well, TV, as far as it aired on TV, he returned on Halloween. Marty Jannetty's back. What a great angle that was, too. I mean, I marked out, like, I remember standing in the kitchen for whatever reason. I was watching that episode in the kitchen, and I was standing there. My grandma used to have a little tiny TV. She kept on this cabinet stand or whatever.
I love that. That's so old school, man. That's so
how she
school.
watched her soap operas during the day while she, did whatever she did in the kitchen. But
I love that.
Watching Jannetty hop the rail and get in the ring, and that shot, that camera shot with the mirror and Sean looking in the mirror and seeing Jannetty, perfect.
Oh, it was perfect.
It was perfect. And, Sherry wound up actually getting glass in her eye. So she had to go, I don't know if she had surgery or what they had to do to get it out, but that was unfortunate. That's not the reason she was out for as long as she was. Obviously, they were selling it for the Rumble, but yeah, she did get something in her eye from that. I remember reading. But I mean, what an angle. Like I marked out like crazy because I was a huge Marty Jannetty fan. So it was perfect for me. It was like, this is another one of my favorite. Like, I loved all the guys that could work, Perfect, Sean, Marty, Martel. So it wasn't necessarily heel or face with me. It was just guys that could work. And then for some reason, I loved the Warrior. So go figure. I was all over the place. But so for your upper mid card, you got Tatanka. You've got Marty Jannetty, who's just returned. I'd argue you have the Big Boss Man, who was always at least an upper mid carder.
Not after the Rumble.
No, he's gone. He's also gone by February. And I'm not sure when they know it. They might already know it because going into 93, because you see the way he's booked. He's barely on TV. He's doing jobs in 3 minutes to like Doink the Clown. And Yep. So it's pretty much predetermined that he's, basically done here. And I never knew why. It's not in the old observers. There's nothing going on. It was prior to me going to the hospital with the COVID pneumonia and things like that. But I was listening to an episode of Jim Cornette. I think it was The Drive-Thru. And he explained what happened. Why the Boss Man left the WWF, and even Corny loved Boss Man. Because remember, he was Big Bubba Rogers, so he knew Corny from the very first day he got a gimmick from WWF. And he made the job guy, Ray Traylor, into Big Bubba Rogers. He gave him to Cornette as his bodyguard in his debut. So Corny's known Boss Man since day one. So they were always friends, and he always called Cornette, asked him for advice, talked to him. They were always buddy-buddy, even the whole time he was in the WWF. And Cornette tells the story that Boss Man kind of maybe believed his gimmick a little too much, being a law enforcement officer, because when the steroid shit went down, pretty much everybody in the company, including Vince, thought Vince was going to prison. And Boss Man, Ray Traylor, thought that it would look bad on him to be a law enforcement officer and working for a company of a guy who's illegally, selling steroids and doing all these illegal things. So he gave us notice. And Cornette kind of basically said, I don't know that Vince is going to prison, and, maybe he should stay there and, collect these paychecks, Ray. But Boss Man in his own mind kind of, maybe believed in his own gimmick a little, maybe like Bret Hart there or something. And, Cornette was telling this story. I mean, just true and he's got such a great memory. And I can't, ever word anything as well as Cornette can, but basically it comes down to Boss Man was a cop. And he didn't want to look like a bad cop. I'm thinking, dude, you used to beat people, when they were handcuffed with a nightstick, and that was all, fake and cool. Man. Yeah, but if Vince goes to prison, it'll look bad on him. It'll reflect bad on the police and the Big Boss Man. So he wanted to leave the company, and that's why he gave us notice and quit the company right after the Nails feud. So I was like, wow. And I just heard that like in the last couple months. So it really, it blows my mind. But your upper mid-card here, though, is Marty Jannetty, who's just back, Tatanka, who's pretty established by this point, Crush, who's really done absolutely nothing other than, crush job guys' heads, and the Big Boss Man, who's gone, basically. And I put the Steiners here because they're the Steiners, but they haven't even wrestled yet, so they really don't count. And Brutus Beefcake will be coming back, but he's not here yet, so eliminate the Steiners, eliminate Beefcake. Boss Man's leaving. He's basically a job guy, even though he was a upper main event or semi-main eventer before that. So really you got Tatanka, Crush, who's done nothing other than he's big, so he automatically gets a spot here, and Marty Jannetty. And Jannetty really only gets this because he's feuding with Shawn Michaels, who's the Intercontinental Champion. So you got Shawn and Marty, you got Tatanka and Crush over here. And on the heel side, like I said, Shawn, Bam Bam Bigelow, who, again, same show as Jannetty's return, was the first Bam Bam vignette. It was also the debut of Doink in the crowd. So it was a huge episode. Halloween I remember that, 1992. Jannetty returns. We get our first look at Doink in the crowd and the first Bam Bam vignette all in one show. So here we have Bam Bam, who's been back 2 months. So he's huge. So he automatically gets the pass straight to the semi-main. He'd been there a few years earlier as well. So Sean, Bam Bam, Doink, who has yet to wrestle. So we really don't know where he is on the card or that he's even a wrestler. And Jerry Lawler, and I only put him here because he ends up feuding with Brett later in the year. Right now, Lawler's really just an announcer and does nothing other than gets his crown shit in at the Rumble.
Yep.
Or if you watch that show on A&E, I mean, he doesn't even debut till King of the Ring. But whatever.
How people forget.
Yeah. So anyways, like right now, you're looking at Shawn. You got Marty, Tatanka, and Crush. And you got Shawn Michaels, Bam Bam Bigelow, who's done nothing at this point. Not his fault. Doink hasn't even wrestled. So like I said, he's a clown. So I'm not even thinking this guy's a upper mid-card guy or whatever. So, and then Money Incorporated, DiBiase and IRS. Obviously, the best tag team wrestlers you have right now. So really almost nobody. You've got like nothing here.
No,
Shawn.
No established.
No. Shawn.
But
Sean's been established.
That's there. Yeah, he's there. Yeah. To be honest, out of the two, both sides, Tatanka and Shawn are really it.
Yeah, it's I said, Crush by default.
Marty's
I think Bam Bam and Crush get the default based on size and look and things. But I agree. Established wise, Shawn and Tatanka. And to me, Marty, because he's feuding with Shawn, and I bought into that. So that worked for me. But again, Marty's all over the place because it depends on who he's feuding with.
But it's just Marty is there because he's feuding with Shawn, and that's really it. If he was feuding with somebody else, I don't think he'd be up there. But
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you have that hot angle and that hot, feud and everything. There's no doubt that he's definitely upper mid card. He was brought back solely for this feud with Shawn Michaels, and if you have Shawn Michaels on the upper mid card, then Marty has to be there by default. No doubt about it.
So, and then we know Marty's gone after the Rumble as well thanks to Shawn. So,
yeah.
And that's our upper mid card. Again, scary thought here. Obviously, Bam Bam will establish himself. Jerry Lawler will eventually get established as a wrestler. Doink. As of right now, these guys mean nothing. Doink hasn't even wrestled. He doesn't even have a name yet. He's that clown playing pranks right now, going into 93.
It's so crazy. We're sitting here and DiBiase's an upper mid card, and he's just there.
And he's just there, like he's in a tag team. Yeah. So he's only there because of his name value. Really, it's not because he's doing anything to be there.
It's crazy to think about, considering how long his run was from the time he came in. Like, this is his first downward, motion since he came in '87. He was the top guy that whole time. Even his feud with Virgil, people get shit on Virgil and talk about Virgil all day.
That was over, man. That was over.
That was so...
Go watch Rumble 91. Go watch SummerSlam 91. Tell me Virgil wasn't over. It's cool now to make fun of him with his meat sauce and fuck money and breadsticks and shit. And, those funny pictures where nobody's in line with him. But I lived 1991. I mean, I lived 1991. I lived those vignettes where he was hinting at turning, going into the Rumble.
Oh, yeah.
I bought all of that. Hook, line, and sinker. The turn was huge. I didn't care for the WrestleMania match. It was pretty shitty, but the SummerSlam, I bought it. He won the belt. He needed to win the belt.
Sherry established with DiBiase to start that, but no, I just ran through the 91 pay-per-views, and to be honest with you, Virgil winning the $1 million title at SummerSlam 91 got a bigger pop than Brett winning the IC title against Perfect.
Yeah,
that's how over Virgil was.
Right.
That feud resonated with people, and just think about this. Dusty and Dustin Rhodes were afterthoughts. They jobbed and got the hell out of town, and they were afterthoughts to Virgil turning face. They went to WCW. Dusty Rhodes was afterthought.
Dusty came into that match as an afterthought, and I don't mean just by the booking. I meant you can tell what Dusty's doing. He's already afterthought the entire night. He's head of WCW, baby.
If you say that in 2021, you're like, Dusty's an afterthought. No way. No, he was. You could add anybody on that other side of the ledger for DiBiase and Virgil. It didn't matter. Everybody knew what was going to happen, and they could not wait for it to happen.
Oh, it was huge.
It was massive. So people can shit on Virgil all you want, but that dude was over more than most people could dream of today for a good 6, 7, 8 month run. Hell, it lasted till Survivor Series.
Yeah, I think when they took the $1 million title off of him, it was like they were done pushing him.
Yep. And just think, if you look at that team, you have Piper, Brett, Bulldog, and then you got Virgil. Which one doesn't fit? Obviously Virgil, but at that point in time, that moment in time, he fit right in.
It was like a really good team. It was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, so people can shit on him all you want, but yeah. But that was really it. After that feud was over, DiBiase was done as far as his career is pretty much done after that. That was it.
And now this, Steve, is where things get really scary, because this is your 1992, beginning of 1993 mid-card. And I use the term mid-card extremely loosely when you look at these names. These are the guys that fit into the mid-card. You have Jim Duggan, who's basically not even full-timing it right now. He's doing jobs and things. Tito Santana, again, who may have been the WWF champion, but for the most part, he's just doing jobs. Earthquake, who basically is gone. He is gone. Not basically, he's gone. He's done in 1992. He doesn't even finish out 92. So he's already gone. Like I said, he comes back like a couple other guys. It works the Rumble match, but he's gone otherwise. So he's coming back for that pay-per-view payday, another big guy or whatever. But other than that, he's already gone. So Duggan, Tito, Typhoon, the Nasty Boys, Kamala, who hasn't come back yet. He's about to come back. He's about to turn babyface, and, he's going to learn how to bowl. So that's where we are there. Bob Backlund, who's been doing the vignettes. I don't remember if he's probably already back on TV by the end of 92. That was a failed project. Reverse time and have Backlund come back as like a 1979 version of himself. That just didn't work. And I'm being nice here.
I like his Rumble. His Rumble.
That was the only thing that got him. I think it was the only thing he was over while he was in the company there as a babyface anyway.
Yeah.
And then I put Owen here to be nice because it's Owen, but let's be honest, Owen was a mid-carder here during the high energy era.
Half the year, right?
Later in 93. He doesn't leave the company.
He just isn't around. I don't even remember him watching him very much. He's
if you watched All American, you'd see him do a job to Bam Bam and guys and whatever and things like that.
I don't remember him much on Raw. I do know he picks up steam heading into 94, around the Survivor Series Showdown time.
Right. When Brett talked Vince out of trying to use Bruce Hart as the feud and turned it into Owen. Thank God.
Thank God. How do you, Brett? You're a dick doing that to your own brother. Bro, I don't want this brother. I want my other brother.
I want the one I can have good matches with.
Give me Owen, brother.
My other brother is a lousy, stinking hyena. Cost Bruce a lot of money.
Bruce is the blonde hair, the other blonde, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
and Bruce wrestled forever.
Porno stash. I thought it was Keith, but no, I like Bruce. I thought Bruce looked awesome when he was tagging Survivor Series.
Well, Bruce worked forever. I mean, he teamed with Pillman and Stampede near the end of the Stampede run and things. But Bruce was older, and he really wasn't the worker, and either Brett nor Owen were not even close.
No, nobody is in that family besides Owen and Brett, but different times, obviously.
So our baby faces are the comedy act Kamala, the 1970s Bob Backlund. I can't say Earthquake because he's gone. What's that?
When did the Nasties leave? They're gone before WrestleMania, right?
No, they're gone after WrestleMania, but it ain't too long. I'll get the exact date as we go on. I don't know. I did a bunch of research for the first several months. I know they're there way after I thought they were, but it's probably more on the house shows.
I just don't remember them being featured. You think the Nasties, they were one of those teams, and they just had that feud with. It almost died when Hogan and Beefcake came back.
It did die. It did. We're feuding with him now, brother. Which is sad because maybe that's why he's Knobs' buddy or something. I don't know.
I doubt that. Hogan ain't
so our mid-card baby faces are like a dying Jim Duggan. Let's face it, he's done by this point.
He does get squashed. I can't wait for that. That's a great angle too.
That is a great angle. Tito Santana, Arriba, or I'm sorry, Ole, because we're in 92, 93. Typhoon, like I said, Bowling with Kamala, and Opie Bob Backlund. And on the heel side, some of the names you might go, oh, okay, but then listen. So on the heel side, sad to say, down to mid-card status, the Model. But he's gone. He comes back and works the Rumble match, but he's gone otherwise. Berserker, who's gone by February. He's gone. January is the end of the Berserker. And boy, the first week of, he's gone mentally, or with me anyway, after the first week of 93. I can't wait to get to that. Berserker in the Hennig match, where Berserker gets one move of offense in the entire match.
He doesn't care.
No, John Nord could give a shit less, but me as a fan, why is this giant guy not getting one real move in? A knee to the back, that's about all he gets. So Like the Model and Berserker, those sound like great names, but you got to remember they're both like being treated as mid-carders and they're both gone. So what does that leave us with? Well, the Repo Man, who is nothing here.
Full on mask, right? And
Yeah,
tire
not yet.
treads on white pants.
Not yet. That's like for one match. I think this is after WrestleMania, or right around WrestleMania.
I think that's Mania, right?
Somewhere around there.
Oh, shit.
Papa Shango, who is basically nothing by this point. Boy, did they drop the ball on that. What a look. But I guess he really wasn't ready wrestling-wise. I don't know that he ever got ready wrestling-wise, to be honest with you. Not just the character, but Charles Wright himself.
He's a good guy, though.
Yeah, he's cool. I'm not saying that. And hell, just looking at, hey, man, I was sold on the Papa Shango, not the voodoo part, but just the look was awesome.
Oh, yeah. So. That's if that dude was 6'2", 6'3", he would not have a career. He's 6'8", 6'9", and he's just massive. He's naturally built. He didn't have to work out, really. He was just big.
So, like, cool I knew all this wasn't real by this point, but I was still, like, confused. I didn't understand, like, de-pushing a guy that I went and saw wrestle The Undertaker in a main event of a night. I went and saw wrestle The Ultimate Warrior in the main event of the show. So he wrestles those guys, and now here, he's basically doing jobs for
Bret.
Yeah, does the job to Bret. Yeah, when Bret had to beat everybody, including Virgil. So the mid-carders are like Repo Man, Papa Shango. I mean, Berserker's gone. The Model's gone. The Beverly Brothers, who are basically, I had to put them as mid-carders because they're not job guys, but they are job guys. If you look at the house shows, not only are they lose every match, but they're not on TV barely ever going over. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the results, especially the early months of 1993, they're fill-ins. So, like, if Berserker gets injured, let's just throw Bo in there. If Papa Shango's got a separated shoulder, just throw Blake in there. It don't matter. And they would go in there and do the job for whoever. They were, like, just next man up. Yeah, so they're, like, job guys, even though I put them in mid-card here. And I put the head shrinkers here, too, because they really aren't completely established yet. So it's like, there's nobody. You eliminate the tag teams, and you have Repo Man and Papa Shango. That's what you have in your mid-card, man. Do you remember the mid-cards of 1989? I mean, shit, man.
Oh, Jesus. It's night and day. I think we should have, like, a mid-year check-in. Like, let's maybe not go in as much detail, but maybe just run through the teams and the roster. Okay, this is where we was at in January, and here's where we're at in July. And let's see if it gets any better.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting, because I have to imagine it can only be better. Hopefully. God.
Well, you get the kid and some other guys coming in, so yeah, absolutely, it does get better.
So now we move down the roster into, well, I don't know if you can really move much further down than like Repo Man and Typhoon and shit like that, but I'm going to try. So we go down to the lower end, the lower card guys, and some of the job guys that are under contract with the company. We're looking at Max Moon, who was actually fired and then rehired, and we'll get to that after we go through the roster here. But Max Moon was Paul Diamond, who also portrayed Kato as a member of the Orient Express. Obviously, they were pretty much done with him at that point, once Kato had basically jobbed everyone 400 times on syndicated TV. But Conan decides he's not going to do the Max Moon gimmick anymore, the comic kid at the time. So they had to find somebody that fit the suit. So they give it, Paul Diamond steps in. Hey, I did Kato. I can do Max Moon. So he becomes Max Moon, and he works the gimmick there for, 2-3 months. And he gets fired for a very particular reason, which we'll get into in a little bit. But then he gets rehired because another lower end guy, and I only say this because I can't really tell where he was meant to be pushed on the card, was a newcomer named Lance Cassidy, who was actually Steve Armstrong from the famed Armstrong wrestling family, the Wild-Eyed Southern Boys with Tracy Smothers, Young Pistols, however you may know him. But it was Steve Armstrong coming in he's basically dressed like a Southern boy, had the guns on his ass and all that good stuff. Supposedly he was eventually going to become a singing cowboy. Vince saw him, heard him singing, didn't know he could sing. So Vince wanted to turn him into a singing cowboy, but that's not what made him quit. He was only there, again, 2-3 months. He quit in the middle of January, or the early part of January did Steve Armstrong. He quit supposedly because he was homesick. He wanted to be in the South. But not only that, I guess he kind of thought the character was going nowhere. He really didn't have any push behind him, and it just wasn't worth it to him. So he winds up putting in his notice like the first week of January, and Max Moon lucks out. Paul Diamond lucks out because he had been fired for, we'll get to what he did here in a few minutes, for those who don't know. But he gets rehired because they needed somebody to fill in for Lance Cassidy on the house shows. So, boom, Paul Diamond gets his job back for a while. So that's where we're at here. So Max Moon, Lance Cassidy, Steve Armstrong's gone by the first week of January, so you can't really count him. You have Coco of High Energy. We were just talking about Virgil and how over he was in 91. By this point, he's a job guy who's lucky to make TV. Virgil here going into 1993. And then the Bushwhackers, who are on a part-time contract. So the lower end shit, which this is lower end shit, don't get me wrong. Virgil, Coco, the Bushwhackers, well, a lot of those guys made it to the Hall of Fame, so I don't know. Maybe they were doing something right. Virgil couldn't even get in over Pistol Pez Watley or Brickhouse Brown, so he's pissing somebody off.
Just wait till he passes and then they'll just throw him in.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones that don't really get to shine because nobody knows who they are anymore, which is sad, but I hate to say it that way. I don't mean it in that negative way.
I know exactly.
That's just the way it is. To Vince, it's about making money, and Pistol Pez Watley's not going to make anybody any money. Not in today's world. Everybody knows who Pez Watley is if you're a real wrestling fan, but casuals, nope, they're not going to spend money on that. But yeah, to be honest with you, these are decent lower job guys. Like Coco and Virgil can put on a decent match with somebody.
Dude, and again, when we were talking NWA, we're shitting all over Tommy Rich. We're shitting all over 1989 Tommy Rich. 1989 Michael Hayes. I'm not shitting on what Michael Hayes did when he talked everybody into the Superdome, into the Sportatorium, into the Omni. I'm not overlooking any of that. I love going back and watching his promos in Georgia and the stuff with the Von Erichs in Dallas. There's not a whole lot of the Mid-South stuff out there, unfortunately, but there's a little bit out there. But I could watch the programs he did in Georgia all day long. I love the Freebird stuff, all the promos they cut there with Freebird playing in the background. But Michael Hayes in 89, not so much. Tommy Rich in 89 in the ring, not so much. And that's where I am here with Coco. Like, Coco is what he is here. Let's just be honest, going into 93. Can he put on, a great, fun match? Yeah, absolutely.
MC Hammer Matt pants and pulling up his britches when he's coming down the aisle.
above his titty.
Yeah. I enjoy Coco. I love his drop kick off the top rope. High Energy actually had a pretty good match with the Headshrinkers at Survivor Series. Nice opener.
They did a great job getting them over and establishing them as a hell of a team. The Headshrinkers. I
think that I just wish you had more brutalizing tag teams that could take advantage of a team like High Energy. They're going to make you look good. And you look at the other side of the ledger.
I just wish they had more tag teams, period. Which we'll get to here in a minute.
Yeah. There's nothing there to take advantage of that. But yeah, those are decent guys that you would want down there just because they were established at one point in time. And that's one thing you can say about WWF fans is they know who they're supposed to know for the most part. And like, oh shit, that's Virgil. He just got destroyed by this guy. Well, this guy must mean something then. So I will say like that's one of the positives of some of these lower guys.
Well, the scary thought here is how close these lower tier guys are to the mid card guys at this point.
Yeah, that's
Coco, Repo Man. I mean, there's not a giant jump in quality there, especially 1993 Repo Man.
Tito's been jobbing since '89, and
let's be honest, Tito was jobbing before '89. He was jobbing all through that period when Can-Am Connection were together. If Tom Zink doesn't leave the WWF, Tito Santana's a job guy. I mean, he was basically doing what he was doing before that. I mean, he was literally getting stuck in tag matches on TV where you're already standing in the ring with Jim Powers and doing a job, So Tito was already looked at in that facet, sadly, basically after he finished his stuff with Savage in 86. I mean, he probably did a little more in 86, but yeah, if you go back and look.
I wish he would have done a little bit more with Butch Reed in 87.
Yeah, I think that would have been the better match than Coco, I think, too.
Because you had that angle after WrestleMania 3, and I think if Butch Reed would have showed up to the date and won the IC title, maybe Tito would have slid in there and maybe got one last run at his belt or something. I don't know, but definitely some possibilities there if they would have went with a better heel champion than Honky Tonk. But yeah, I mean, El Matador and Coco you can flip them and it doesn't even matter. They're the exact same.
I mean, they're both losing. I mean, Tito's probably looked at as a higher level, but yeah, neither one of them are going over in a real match.
Yeah.
So it's scary how close almost basically the TV job guys or the lower end guys are with the mid card here. It was never like that before. And over on the heel side, there's very few guys here too that are under contract that are doing jobs. You got Skinner, who's really not beating anybody outside of, well, I don't think he's winning any matches. You've got Damian Demento, who's already debuted, but he's doing jobs by January on TV, high-profile jobs to guys like The Undertaker and things. Surprised Brett didn't beat him. Probably didn't want to get in the ring with the guy because he was terrible, just terrible after reviewing some of his matches. I didn't realize how bad he was. Great look, terrible in the ring, awful. And it's sad, too, because he's one of those guys that were built up huge in the aftermags. Like, his picture was in every aftermag during that era up until he got hired by the WWF. Because he had the size and the look. Unfortunately, he couldn't put it together in the ring. You got Terry Taylor, who just randomly pops back up out of nowhere in the WWF. They killed him as the Rooster.
Tremendous neon green jacket and matching tights to go with it. Just excellent. Tremendous.
Yeah, sure. That's one word for it. And for those who don't know what Steve's talking about, you can go on the Twitter and look our Twitter account at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. You can tell Terry didn't give a shit because he didn't spend 10 cents on that gear. He never wore that jacket and trunks again or before. I don't know where they came from, but he reverts back to his the old red jacket by the time we get to Monday Night Raw in January 93. But the match I'm referring to, I got pictures up online. The jacket is just insanely cheap, even by 92, 93 standards. And the trunks, trying to fit the word terrific across his ass, it doesn't even fit. So it's insane. But so we have the Skinner, we have Damian Demento, we have Terry Taylor, who's basically, as soon as he comes in, almost a semi-retired part-timer because he's hosting All-American episodes and things by January or February of 93. And we have the Brooklyn Brawlers / Kim Chi, who's going to be doing Kim Chi matches versus Kamala in early 93. So that's your lower tier guys. Unbelievable. Just
it's crazy.
Then I look at the tag teams really quick before we move on with some of the other stuff. Really all we have, the Disasters are done. The Bushwhackers are part-time. I hate to even include them here. So we have like High Energy, and the Steiners haven't wrestled yet. So we can include them if you want, but they haven't wrestled yet. So we've got the Nasty Boys and High Energy. That's our babyface tag teams in the WWF right now. That's it. And remember,
you got the Steiners.
Yeah. And you have Coco and Owen here who are basically, they job in any singles match they're in. But we have high Energy and the Nasty Boys. And on the other end, we have Money Incorporated, the Head Shrinkers, which are both fairly solid heel teams. I'm not knocking that, but
that's really good teams.
But that's about it. And then you have the Beverly Brothers, who are essentially job guys.
Royal Rumble. They die at Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
With the Frankensteiner. This may not be the right episode to ask this, but did Owen blow out his knee when he got eliminated?
No.
Hell
of a bump, though. Oh, I know. I remember watching it live and beyond. Every time I watched it, I go,
yeah, every time I see it, I'm like, how did he not blow his knee out?
Yeah, it's insane. Anyway. The elimination. Yeah. No, but yeah, so we have on one side, it's the Nasties, who were feuding with Money Inc., and High Energy, who are not really feuding with anybody. They're there to put people over. And on the other side, it's Money Incorporated, Head Shrinkers, who have really nobody to work with. And the Beverly Brothers, who are basically essentially jobbers to the stars, if you will. That's about it. That's all we got in the it's crazy to see how depleted the tag teams became over the course of the early 90s. If you just think back to the Survivor Series 88 and all those teams standing in the ring at the same time. Insane.
Oh, it is. Even 87.
Sure.
But yeah. And then how is it? Somebody had to lose interest in tag team wrestling going into this. I to be honest with you, it felt like the tag team division. I know LOD came in, but it felt like after WrestleMania 7, after the Hart Foundation disbanded, I felt like that was the end of the golden era of tag team wrestling in WWF. I think that was it. Demolition was already done. The Harts broke up. Everybody else is already gone, like the Bulldogs, the Rougeos.
They buried Power and Glory for getting over.
Yeah, so I just feel like that was it. Like once the Hart Foundation was done, there's really no working class tag team left. I mean, obviously the LOD and the Nasty Boys, Natural Disasters, things like that, they're there. But when you think of the tag team wrestling, I'm thinking those badass teams that can work, like the Strike Force, Rockers, Hearts, Bulldogs,
Brainbusters, yeah.
Brainbusters, all those guys. Like you can go on Demolition. Even the Powers of Pain were decent as far as being nice.
Powers of Pain
pieces.
Were decent when the Barbarian was in the ring. I'll give you that much.
Yeah. I mean, I just felt like
no, I know what you're
nice,
saying though. Yeah,
like,
no,
nice counterparts to some of these other good teams. Like the Bulldogs and Demolition, and those guys can make them work and get them to have decent matches. So. Even the worst of that division in like 88, 89.
The Bolsheviks?
Well, besides them, I was thinking Powers of Pain since that's what we was talking about. But
teams that were relevant, actual like teams you took
throw
seriously.
them in here, and they're like probably your champions in '93 if they were still there.
Facto,
obviously, with the
by
Roys
default.
and everything. By default, the worst of '89, not counting the Bolsheviks, is.
Well, the Bolsheviks didn't exist in 89, so we got that much going. That's cool.
Yeah.
Like, Nikolai was gone for most of 89, so I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, like, it's crazy to think, like, you didn't even need the Bolsheviks, really.
No, it was just something, I think it was just Vince's way of
glad
giving...
Volkov could get paid. But
giving Nikolai a job, and I don't know where he was for most of 89, so Boris became a job guy, and then Nikolai comes back, and they do the gimmick there with the face turn and shit. But... yeah, but it's crazy just looking at these teams. There's no teams. There's like 5 teams in the company. And the Beverly Brothers are barely a team. I mean they are a team, but they're jobbing. And High Energy is really split up quite often and doing jobs as well. So it's like the Nasties are almost the only full-time tag team. Well, the Steiners are coming in now. They're getting ready to wrestle, but it's crazy. And really, this confused me a little bit. I didn't really expect this. I was thinking, much like the demise of the tag teams, I thought we had seen the demise of the managers, and really we had, because Bobby Heenan wasn't managing and Slick was no longer doing his thing as a heel. Everything had really changed up a lot. Jimmy Hart was managing like a tag team and not like 50 people anymore. So it felt to me like we no longer had managers until I started writing them all down for this show. And then I realized, holy shit, there may be more managers here moving into 93 than there were, during, the heyday in the late 80s and the beginning of the 90s. But that doesn't make him good. So I looked at it and it's like, Slick's the babyface manager for Kamala, which, I mean, you have to count it because it happens, but at the same time, terrible. Paul Bear's there with The Undertaker. It's by default. Jimmy Hart's still there, but he's really just managing Money Inc. by this point. The Mountie just left, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So it's like Jimmy Hart with Money Inc. You have Afa with the Head Shrinkers. You have Mr. Fuji, who's now just with Yokozuna, if my memory. Because he's not even with Berserker in January 93. So he's basically just with Yoko. Sherry, who's with nobody at this point, and she kind of really never comes back as a full-time manager. And Harvey Whippleman, who loses Kamala, and then he'll have Giant Gonzalez at Rumble, and eventually Mr. Hughes for a little bit in the summer. But these are your managers. So you have 2 babyface managers, Slick and Bearer. And you have Hart, Afa, Whippleman, Fuji, Sherry, 5 heel managers. That's 7 managers in your company. And none of them are doing anything worth a shit, if you ask me. So it's really odd. Really odd to see that there were 7 managers. I didn't really ever think of that until I started writing them down. I go, oh my God. There were this many managers here, and none of them really had any relevance to anything. They were just kind of backdrops to a lot of the characters.
The one that was kind of worth it, damn, was Paul Bearer. Sherry, obviously, shouldn't she be on the other side?
Well, yeah, come Royal Rumble, but we don't know that yet, so.
Oh, okay, my bad.
She's really
the rest of them, like, I was just gonna say, when you think about like the glory days of managers, Jimmy Hart had his whole crew, and Bobby Heenan had his, and then now it's like Slick has Kamala, Paul Bearer has Undertaker, Jimmy Hart has Money Inc., and then he turns to Hogan, and that's it. Like Afa has his team, Harvey has his one guy, and
Fuji has Yoko because he's not even with Berserker. So
yeah, I mean he has Gonzalez coming up, but Mr. Fuji
Whippleman,
has Yoko, and Sherry. Yeah. I don't know what Sherry's doing. I mean, I know she goes to Marty. Marty gets fired.
Marty gets fired immediately. She goes to Tatanka for one night or whatever that was,
just to get with Luna, and so it's very interesting. It's definitely. It's a changing of the guard of, you have all the tag teams and you have managers, and that was kind of the staple of those teams or, that company. And now it's the complete opposite. the top guys, and that's it.
Yeah, and it's so funny because people, the talk started in the 2000s. Vince doesn't care about tag teams anymore. Vince gave up. There was talk at one point he was going to get rid of tag team wrestling, maybe not necessarily actual tag matches, but get rid of the tag titles, get rid of the tag division many years ago. There was talk of that, way back in WCW too with Bischoff near the end of his run there. But it's funny, and then they talk about, there's no managers anymore. MVP's there now, and there's some things like that. But over the course of the last 20 years, there have been very few managers, and there's always been that talk of Vince doesn't like managers anymore. He doesn't want managers anymore. It was 280s and whatever that means. So you can kind of see it all the way back here going into 93. He's clearly lost interest in the tag division, and these managers aren't really doing a whole lot. Because you talked about Bobby Heenan had a stable. Jimmy Hart had a stable. Even Slick had a much smaller stable, but he had a stable. Fuji technically only was given to like one guy because he couldn't really do the promos. So that's why the Orient Express really floundered outside of their sides, because they weren't allowed to cut the promo because you weren't allowed to know that they could speak English. Tanaka being from Hawaii, and Sato was from Japan, but Paul Diamond obviously being Caucasian American. So Fuji would have to cut these promos, and I don't have no idea.
It made sense with Demolition, the way he cut his promos. He just wanted people to demolish, but I don't know what Fuji can say that's going to make you believe the Orient Express are going to do anything.
Well, it also helped that Axe and Smash could speak when Fuji got done, too. They say their part.
Yeah.
So we look at all of these guys and where they're at here on this roster now, but we have to look at all the guys who have just left the company and why this company's in the state that it's in right now. We talked about Boss Man getting ready to leave, the Berserkers getting ready to leave, Earthquake's basically gone, Rick Martel's gone. Those are some names. Boss Man, the model Rick Martel. I mean, these guys are pretty established names. Earthquake, who had the run with Hogan, and then everything that followed that. So these guys are gone or getting ready to leave the company. And that's not all. We lost a lot of other talent over the last couple months of 1992. The Mountie gave his notice, so they had him do a 1-minute quick job to Bret Hart, of all people, on TV on his way out. So the Mountie's gone by the end of October. The British Bulldog and the Warrior both fired at the same time because of the human growth hormone. It was no longer just steroids. They got fired. I think they had HGH, which was also illegal. They were testing. Warrior got busted. Story goes, Warrior got busted, not the Bulldog. And Warrior kind of ratted out the Bulldog and got him fired because he goes, well, how come I got fired and the Bulldog didn't get fired? We both bought the same, you bought and used the same shit. So then they go and test Bulldog, and he gets fired along with the Warrior. So I'm not sure exactly when it happened. It had to be right around the same time as Mountie was on the way out, though. So they're losing all these guys left and right. Then there's Nails, who was going to move from the Boss Man feud into a feud, and that's proven because they have the stare down on TV, so it exists. And it's on the cover of a magazine. Yeah.
January 93.
Yeah, cover of a magazine. So we're getting ready to see, which thank God it didn't happen, but a Nails and Undertaker match, or feud, because the story goes they were going to, well, I don't know if he would have liked that better than the Giant Gonzalez at WrestleMania, but the story goes there was going to be a Nails Undertaker electric chair match, and don't ask me how it was supposed to work at WrestleMania.
That would have been awesome.
That would have been interesting. So
Vince doing his own Chamber of Horrors, huh?
Of course, Nails gets his SummerSlam payoff where he, squashed Virgil in 3 minutes, and he doesn't like whatever he's getting paid, which Kamala's went on record as saying he was very disappointed with what he got paid for that giant, big arena match. But he fought The Undertaker too. I think that was like the semi-main event of the night. And I'm not saying that's what drew the house.
No, that's not semi-main when you got Savage and Warrior.
I meant book like where it was placed on the card. I know Savage and Warrior was in the middle because of the finish. But, I mean, it just, Brett and Bulldog follows the Undertaker and Kamala match.
Yeah.
And he got paid, I don't remember what it was, but it was something, very low when you're, 80,000 people. He wasn't happy. So I can only imagine what Nails, who had been in the company June, July, 3 months, got paid to squash Virgil. And there's this dickhead walking in, he's been in the company half a year, and he's walking into Vince McMahon's office in December and choking him out or punching him or whatever the hell, the story goes. And then he turns around and says Vince tried to molest him or something, tried to get a lawsuit going on Vince, which nobody believes. And that so many people have refuted that for a variety of reasons. But That was his story. He was, trying to sue the company to make millions or whatever the hell he was trying to get out of it, because 'twas the time they were, like you said, they were under all these sex scandals anyway. So he just joined in to try to rob from the company. And that's what it was. But that's another guy they had built as a semi-main eventer. And I'm not saying that because he was talented. I didn't get it. But
he had a hot debut, man. That debut was insane.
I hated that because Bossman was, him and Sean were my favorites.
Oh, I know Bossman's your guy, but man, that was a pretty impactful debut.
It took the wind out of my sails when I saw that. I'll tell you that. Like, I was just like, wow, I can't believe they did that to the Bossman. And then I really felt like the match at Survivor Series fell flat. They didn't really use the nightstick. He beats him with the Bossman slam, and then dude rolls out of the ring and no-sells it, walking backwards. And I know they did the cage matches afterwards, which I thought made more sense. He was in jail. They did the cage matches on the house shows. I never got to see that. I'm sure it wasn't very good. Nothing with nails was. Yeah. But it is what it is. So the Mounties gone. These are huge names. Bulldog and the Warrior are gone. That's how Mr. Perfect comes back. That's how some of these other guys get bumped up to main event status, because the original story was Warrior, and believe it if you want to believe it or not, it's up, whatever. It depends on who tells the story, but Warrior was to go heel and work Bret Hart at Royal Rumble. That's how Razor got that slot. Perfect got Warrior's slot at Survivor Series, supposedly.
How would that would have worked?
I don't know, because I'm thinking maybe they were going to put the belt on Warrior.
See, I was talking to my friend about this the other day, and I was like, just think of this. Let's say Flair says he's done. And so they never really put the belt back on him in September. Macho Man keeps it. Warrior wins the Rumble, and then you got Macho and Warrior at WrestleMania in '93. That would have been pretty sweet. I know they're different times. It's not WrestleMania 7, but there's history there. You could have sold that real well, and I think it would have been pretty damn good as far as anticipation and wanting to see that. I think that would have been an idea. I don't get how you can turn Warrior heel and beat Bret. Obviously, that's fine if that's what you want to do, but you saying Hogan's going to come back, join the Rumble, and just squash everybody right away?
Oh, I don't know that he was going to be in the Rumble. I don't know how they would work him. I don't know.
The elephant in the room, and I'm not, no pun intended, but is Yokozuna. What the hell happens to him? Like, how do you can't dump him, so do you even put him in the Rumble? So, like,
that's a good question.
Do?
Who knows? Well, you've seen the pictures. Anybody that wants to go out there and look up like the pictures of the original.
Yeah, I have it.
Group of guys. Yeah, I remember getting it in the mail. The original picture of the guys that were to be featured in the Rumble match or the Rumble pay-per-view, and Warrior's very prominently featured on the front of that. And then he's gone, obviously, in the remake of it, and some of the other guys that are no longer with the company. By the time it gets closer to Royal Rumble time, they're no longer on the picture of the pay-per-view, the promotional thing. But I got the original one from my cable company. In with the bill or whatever for that month. So I don't know where it is. I'm sure I still have it. Some
pamphlet.
It's like a pamphlet. Yeah, it's like a pamphlet.
I gotcha. I know, like it's in the publications. If you look at the very first Royal Rumble ad in the magazine, it's the same as the poster. Warriors down there. I think they have Ric Flair's on there, Bulldog's on there, and then you get to the other one. It's like they were like real tight and fit together, and then they took out Warrior and just replaced it with Mr. Perfect. And
I know Nails was in there too.
Yeah, Nails was in there. So they had to take out like 3 or 4 guys, and when they filled them in with the guys that replaced them, there's like a gap there, so it's not as concise and fitting. But I scan them and I used to print them off at like Office Depot or something as a 11x14 or something, a 16x24 poster. And I prefer the original with the Ultimate Warrior and those guys on there, Bulldog. Those are some of my favorite guys of all time. So that's the one I printed out myself. But yeah, it's definitely out there. The Royal Rumble in '93 would have been a whole lot better, a whole lot more star power if those guys weren't gone.
Yeah, so you lose the Mountie who puts in his notice, quits the company. Bulldog and Warrior are fired. Nails is fired for attacking the damn owner of the company. Not a really big loss here, but the Genius is gone, which basically gives away that they're giving up on the Beverly Brothers. The Genius finished up his last date was Survivor Series 92. Funny story there. That was Thanksgiving Eve was that year's Survivor Series. And Thanksgiving Day, my grandparents would have Thanksgiving for my aunts and uncles and everybody and stuff. Everybody would come over. My cousins would come over. And the cousins that were my age were all wrestling fans. Had a couple of them. And me and one of my cousins, Jason, we just happened to pull out my radio and trying to find something to do in the afternoon. And we come across this random wrestling, like special wrestling radio talk show on Thanksgiving. It's like, they were like annual thing they do or something. They were just happened to be talking about wrestling. We got lucky and the genius calls in and he announced like, yeah, that was my last night with the company. I'm moving to Europe or something like that. We were like, so at that point we didn't, it wasn't even the weekend yet. So we didn't know, we were never known the genius was gone. But it was just kind of like a little interesting inside thing that we got, that maybe nobody else knew at that time that he was done. So, yeah, the genius is gone as a manager. The Beverly Brothers are basically, like I said, job guys at that point. Sergeant Slaughter's pulled from the Mountie feud. He is pulled out of the ring and kind of made into a WWF official. The enforcer, he's like watching over everything, however long that lasts anyway. So there's a lot of names just gone or pulled out of the ring. It's so much stuff has changed. So much stuff has changed. And it really all begins and ends with Warrior and Bulldog. And you can argue Nails only because he was scheduled to work with Taker. But yeah. Gonzalez kind of comes in and fills that void anyway. But Bulldog and Warrior, really, both of them gone, it changes.
That's huge.
Yeah, it changes everything. Everybody else below them has to get elevated.
Yeah. It's almost like SummerSlam 92 didn't even happen. Like it did, obviously, but like whatever was relevant on that show or whatever you was building to was completely wasted and done before even Survivor Series. So I kind of wish the steroid scandal never would have happened. I mean, I hate to say that because I love Bret Hart and guys like Shawn Michaels. It's just makes you wonder how long they would have had to have waited for their opportunity if it ever came, if the steroid scandal never happened. But I really would have been interested to see what they had planned for the Warrior after his comeback. It definitely got cut short due to the steroid stuff. But
I was always a giant Warrior fan, but man, it's like they had nothing for him here in 92. I really didn't like the direction they were going with him. Teaming with Savage made no sense to me. Not because of their past. It was just, these guys are both mega superstars. Yeah, it's like, why are you putting him in tag team matches? And people go, oh, well, the Mega Powers. Well, yeah, okay. It just, this one didn't click like the Mega Powers for me at all.
Oh, I just don't think this is going to sound horrible just because of who's involved, but I don't think the counterpart was on their level. Ric Flair in 92 in WWF was never really looked at as a top guy. No matter how well he worked, he was always considered a WCW guy. He still is. When I watch him in WWF, I'm just thinking that's a WCW guy. And I don't know if that would ever change, but Razor Ramon and Ric Flair aren't Andre the Giant and Ted DiBiase in 1988. I'm sorry. They're not even Zeus and Macho Man in 1989.
Yeah, Razor's definitely not. I mean, he's just...
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just different times. So, like, it didn't make sense. Like, to me, when you have Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior on the same side of the coin and you're looking over at anybody, it's not going to work in the realm of the WWF unless it's a Hulk Hogan or something, somehow one of these teams turn heels or whatever. But other than that, nobody was going to measure up to those guys on that side of the ledger.
Right, and they do a decent job going out and trying to find somebody as fast as they can. Like Gonzalez, I don't know when the deal was made. He was already going to come in, I'm sure, by this point. But Gonzalez
December,
replaces...
Harvey cut that bomb. I'm going to drop a bomb.
But you figure, like, Gonzalez kind of plugs in for Nails. Perfect plugs in for the Warrior, even if they're not maybe necessarily both on the same tier. But he was found, like, somebody came up with that idea, and they did find somebody to plug into that spot. Bulldog really had nobody that replaced him, and that's in that top, as high as you can go on that semi-main event slot, that upper mid-card, whatever you want to call it, spot. Bulldog's above Crush. He's above Tatanka. He's definitely above, like, Marty Jannetty. But he's gone.
Was basically main event at that point.
And so for Bulldog to go, your next man up's like Tatanka, which is not the Bulldog. So it definitely changed the entire game as far as your roster goes. And Perfect, and I love him more than the Warrior, but Perfect was no Warrior as far as over with the fans. I mean, yes, he was over as hell at points here, but he still wasn't remembered like the Warrior. So
no, he's definitely not.
So it's just
almost forgotten.
It's crazy, how much this changed everything. And then you know, that's just where you are with the roster. And I promised to tell the Paul Diamond story, so I'll do that before we finish up here. So I talked about Max Moon, basically the character, the comic kid, was originally Raylan Pago originally was supposed to be Conan. Yes, that Conan in that gimmick, that gear. That gear was made for Conan. I think there's a match in the Hidden Gems whenever they come, if they ever come to the Peacock. You'll see that Conan was in the gimmick. He worked the dark matches. He'd already been promised the gimmick that Vince would have never spent all that money on all that nonsense. Conan was the biggest thing there was in Mexico by this point. He was the Hulk Hogan of Mexico. So it was Conan's decision that I'm not going to do this shit. He goes back to Mexico and makes $1 zillion down there, so it didn't hurt him any. In fact, I'm betting he was getting paid a lot less to work for Vince than he was getting paid down there in Mexico. He comes up, he does a couple matches, dark matches, just to get the gimmick, like feel for the gimmick, put the gimmick on and make sure it works and all this horse shit. And he decides this is not for me and fuck this shit. This isn't what I signed up for, and he's gone. And now we paid all this money into this stupid costume, and instead of just going, fuck it, pal, it's like, who do we got that can fit into the costume? Paul Diamond. And so Paul Diamond, who Sean doesn't have the pull here in 92, so it wasn't Sean that got him the spot, I'm sure, but they've been friends forever. So that probably kind of worked out. So Paul Diamond probably worked out for Max Moon working that first Raw anyway. Gets the Max Moon character, and it's originally the comic kid. Then you hear for at least one match, it's Maximilian Moon, and then he becomes just Max Moon. And he's Max Moon for, a few weeks, and then he's just gone for a few weeks. And what happens was he got fired. Paul Diamond was fired from the company, and Vince said, fuck it, he didn't find a third guy to put the gimmick on. It was going to be buried. Unfortunately, Max Moon comes back, like I said, to replace Lance Cassidy on the house shows and some TV, and yes, even the Royal Rumble. He winds up working the Rumble match. But the reason he was fired, and I know you know the story by now, Steve, is Paul Diamond was actually caught having an affair with Tatanka's wife, because for some reason, Tatanka decided he was going to take his wife on the road with him. Maybe he should have had more conversations with Randy Savage on how to handle that. Take it the way you want. But he didn't. And this is what happened. Paul Diamond was sleeping with Tatanka's wife, which was a no-no. I'm sure wrestlers did it all the time. But, he got found out. Yeah, and he got caught. And, it's this era now. This isn't 1984. So naturally... This isn't,
what's his name, finding Sting in bed with Dark Journey.
Oh, Dick Slater, yeah. Well,
yeah.
Well, he found out about it later, but yeah, he still made Sting. Sting paid for that, though. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But he got to keep his job.
I don't see Tatanka
kicking ass now.
Cornering Paul Diamond and, dude, I'm going to kick your ass for banging my wife. Like, I'm just going to get you fired. It's 93. It's not, 89?
Yeah, so this is like the tail end of 92. And I'm sure Tatanka was the one that went to somebody, said something. And here you have Tatanka, who's your undefeated Native American. You've been pushing him for a year now. Trying to get him to that next level, that almost main event level, really. Trying, I said, Steve. I didn't say he was. And then you have Paul Diamond, who is your second version of Max Moon, who it's already a flop anyway. It's already a failure anyway. So what do? Well, say goodbye to Paul Diamond. He was fired. Of course, he gets rehired there, and he works, gets a little extra time on the road, thanks to Steve Armstrong quitting abruptly, giving notice out of nowhere. He does get lucky there, and he gets to work a little longer with the company, but for all intents and purposes, Max Moon's pretty much done. I mean, he does work Raw, and he works the Rumble match, but not a whole lot after that. Yeah, that's the story, though. Paul Diamond, caught with the Native American Tatanka's wife. And I don't know how long that was going on, but it was the way it was always worded, it was more than a one-time deal. So it is what it is, man. You reap what you sow.
Yeah.
On both ends, I suppose.
Yep.
So we move on. We'll look at January feuds coming in, and this goes back to the roster. This is scary. At any point in time, you could list like 8 feuds going on in the WWF, and maybe that bottom feud was like, ugh, that's a little scary. Ron Bass and Junkyard Dog working the house shows? Ugh. But it doesn't get any scarier than this, because there really is nothing. Like, we're moving into a new year, and our feuds are Mr. Perfect and Ric Flair. Awesome. Shawn and Marty. Awesome. Nasty Boys and Money Inc. Well, the matches probably aren't that great, but the story's there that Jimmy Hart screwed over one of his teams in favor of the other team. That's it. It's your feuds. And the Money Inc. Nasty's feud, it really isn't being told on TV outside of the initial. That's more for the house shows. So we know we got Shawn and Marty at the Rumble. Perfect and Flair, go into the Rumble and they do shit on TV. There's the issue in the match at the Rumble, and then, the big match that follows on TV the following night. Outside of that, there's nothing. We know the Undertaker's eventually going to be with the Giant Gonzalez, but Nails is gone. So Taker's left feuding with nobody right now. We know Brett's going to work Razor at the Rumble, but there's really no feud behind it. I mean, you can argue once we get into January, Razor attacks Owen, which felt forced, like we need something. So let's just have him attack Owen. And then they do the back and forth, Brett doing the promo and Razor on the original inception of the Titantron, if you want to call it that, which I always thought was cool.
Video wall there.
Yeah, the video, yeah. So very cool for its time anyway. And I love the way Razor just owned that promo, just shitting all over Brett, cutting him off. It's good stuff. But as of right now, it's just a match announced for the pay-per-view. Like, he's going for the belt. So really, we have 3 feuds. I don't know that at any point in the company's history, up to this point, there were 3 feuds. You know what I mean? It's insane. And if you look, each one, well, Shawn's a champion. Money Incorporated's a champion. So Brett's a champion, so that doesn't count. But Flair and Perfect are really the only non-title feud right now. That's pretty much all we got. And that's a scary...
That's pretty scary.
Yeah, it's scary. Yeah, they really have no idea there's just nothing. They have no ideas. And
I think the problem with that is you just praying to God that your houses are sold off those top matches. Because if they're not, there ain't nothing else there to cover for it. You don't have
what's
any.
Odd is they don't even want to give away some of those matches, like the Perfect and Flair match. They're not even really doing that on the house shows, which we'll talk about here in a minute when I run down the house shows. But the main matches in the house shows for January. But it's scary to think that that's it. We have no other ideas for anybody. It's crazy. Took a couple notes here from the Observer. Meltzer noted that business continues to fall. The WWF lost its television at this point by the end of 92 in Germany, Austria, the Netherlands, Switzerland. So they're losing TV in countries like Germany. That's a huge deal. They no longer they can't watch the WWF for at least however long this lasts till they pick up a new channel. And Meltzer also reported after the fourth quarter of 1992, in which its television ratings failed to show the expected seasonal increase. And before that, coming off the lowest ratings in its entire history, talking about earlier in 92, the WWF has decided to revamp its cable lineup. Starting the weekend of January 9th, the new Saturday morning show called WWF Mania will debut in the 10 a.m. time slot. The new host, the new guy coming to the company, was Todd Pettengill. I've listened to him do a few interviews. Vince basically heard him on the radio. Todd had a big, I don't know if he still does or not, but for many, many years prior to and after his run in the WWF, Todd had a huge radio show. It won a lot of awards. It was like #1 and shit. Local market anyway, New York City, which is huge. Like Scott and Todd, the morning radio show. And Vince heard him, much like he heard Rob Bartlett, much like he saw Jameson's character perform at a stand-up or whatever. He got this one right, I thought. Todd did a great job as a Schiller, and he wasn't a great commentator, but he didn't want to commentate. But I thought he was a great show host and did the good job selling the pay-per-views in the when they would do the pay-per-view gimmicks. So Primetime also gone. Beginning January 11th, it's going to be replaced by a show called, you may have heard of it, Steve, Monday Night Raw. They're changing things up. Ratings are in the toilet, the worst they've ever been in company history. They didn't increase over the fall in October, November, December like they normally do when everybody's back in the house and can't do shit anymore because of the weather. So things are in the dumps, man.
That's an understatement. It's definitely bad times, and it doesn't get any better. Not anytime soon. Not till probably 97 do they pick back up. I mean, they hold steady. It's not like right now where you're getting like 1 million viewers. They were still pulling in like 2s and sometimes 3s depending on what's going on, which is bad ratings in 92, 93. It's a little different in 2021, but they still did well. They were like, if you do it today, the numbers that like WCW is pulling in 2000, like if you could guarantee that in 2021, WCW would still be around, because that's some good TV numbers. But yeah, it's crazy. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows for forever for WWF. Absolutely not.
They had a great fall, like Humpty Dumpty, man.
Massive fall.
Yeah, and it took a while.
It wasn't
really...
like, to be honest, it didn't feel like it was abrupt. You could just kind of sense it. As soon as WrestleMania 8 was over, it just felt like a whole new company, and Hogan was gone. And because he flirted with retirement and went and did Suburban Commando or whatever it was, that was good. He was Mr. Nanny, maybe one of those movies. But when you say you're going to retire, and then after your match is over with Sid, that was not really decisive, and then you're gone, people are like, well, I guess he isn't coming back. So they left with him, a lot of them. That's really the turning point to me. It just felt like it was completely downhill after that.
Yeah, I mean, the roster had changed so much by 1992 as well. Like everybody, most of the guys at WrestleMania 7 were at WrestleMania 6 and WrestleMania 5. So there was an established troupe of guys that had worked, for years with the company. And that slow decline of those guys really lost a lot of those people. And like you said, Hogan's gone, Sid's in there. They've turned him heel, but the fans want to cheer him. And then he's gone, like almost immediately after WrestleMania 8. The Warrior's back, but the casual fan that knows who the Warrior is looking at him completely a lot smaller. And that's when the story, that's the second Ultimate Warrior. The first one died. I don't know if you ever heard those when you were growing up.
Oh, dude. People see me wearing like a wrestling shirt or something like, oh, you like the Ultimate Warrior? I'm like, yeah, did you know he died? And the one that came back was a different one. And I'm like, no. How do you explain it to people that don't get it, that don't know? I'm like, yeah. I heard about
you just
that.
go along with it because you're not going to have that conversation. Like, I don't want to have a conversation with you. So, yeah. I had an uncle. I have an uncle that he even used to. I had an uncle, still have him. But I mean, I'm talking past tense in regards to what he used to say. He used to always talk about the second Undertaker, and this is in the 90s. So I don't know what the hell he was. I know he looked a lot different from 1990 by the time, the hair was in the face and things. And maybe that's what he was going off of. But he used to always talk about not just how there was two Warriors, but he would talk about like the second Undertaker.
Well, Brian,
I never
that angle, was that what he's talking about?
No, because he didn't watch it that hardcore. He was just talking about like there was a different guy playing the character. And I never went into like I wasn't going to argue with him or explain it to him. It's like, it's not even worth it, dude. It's like, yeah.
You just believe what you believe.
Yeah, second Undertaker.
Here.
Yep, that's it. So it's kind of funny. As we close out, man, I wanted to look real quick at some January stuff so that we're not stuck doing that on the next episode when we actually look at all the TV and stuff for January of 1993. Looking at the house show matches, like everybody, they call them the marriages, the guys that were working each other every night here in January of 93. And it's kind of interesting, as like I talked, the Beverleys are relegated to, as I already said, filling in for injured guys most of the month. They're filling in for Razor, who eventually gets a knee injury. They're filling in for the Berserker for an undisclosed injury. I couldn't figure out what the hell was wrong with him. He basically works that match with Perfect, and he doesn't work again on TV anyway. He comes back and works the Rumble, and that's his last night, I believe. Or maybe he works like another house show or something after that. But he's gone before February. He's gone by the end of January. So the Beverleys are coming in just filling in these singles matches for all these guys. Well, they're injured. So you go here and you go there. So they're not even really being used properly. Crush, still working the undercard, just squashing guys. Skinner, the Brawler, Repo Man, Papa Shango, all of them. It didn't matter who. Again, these guys are interchangeable. So the Brawler's interchangeable with Papa Shango at this point. They're all doing jobs for Crush in January. Tito Santana is actually getting wins over the Repo Man and Skinner. Again, there's that, these are the undercard matches on the house shows, obviously, but these guys are just relegated to the undercard. And even though some of them have been established as a much higher guy than another one, they're still interchangeable the way they're being booked here. The Beverleys, Tito, Repo Man, Skinner, Papa Shango, all of them. There's nothing for them, and they're not doing anything. We got Skinner even gets a win here. This is how bad Paul Diamond's in the doghouse. Comes back and replaces Lance Cassidy, and he's doing jobs to Skinner. So Skinner over Max Moon the first half of the month, and then Terry Taylor gets some wins over Jimmy Powers also. Jimmy Powers actually comes in and he does some replacement matches for Lance Cassidy as well here in January. So it's just interesting to look at all this undercard crap, though. Like half the half the house show is just undercard guys. Steiner's getting warm-up matches on the house shows, Steve, with Dwayne Gill and Barry Hardy as the executioners, the guy, I think they work him on Raw, that first Raw. So the Steiners are basically working job guys, squash matches on the house shows at this point, instead of working the Beverleys or whatever. So that's what we're getting on the house shows right now. Bob Backlund over the Berserker on the nights the Berserker isn't working. He isn't injured. So Backlund, again, undercard. I mean, I get where they were trying to go with him, but in Berserker, we see where he is too. Backlund basically pinning the Berserker every night. That had to be an interesting match. Talk about a contrast of styles. Can you imagine what's going through Bob's head as he returns to wrestling? And that's what's standing across from him in the ring. And then Head Shrinkers, like you said, solid opener, Survivor Series, over high energy throughout January. So they could continuing those matches, just putting the Head Shrinkers over, building them up. Virgil and Tatanka flip-flop opponents throughout the month, back and forth. Virgil, for the first half of the month, beats the Brooklyn Brawler. Second half of the month, jobs to Damien Demento, so you can kind of see where everybody's pecking order is here. Tatanka, first half of the month, over Damien Demento. And then second half of the month, beats the Brawler. So even Tatanka, who is like upper mid-card, is working the Brooklyn Brawler on house shows, and Damien Demento. So it's clearly they have no idea what to do with anybody, almost anybody at this point.
Yeah, man, this is it's a far cry from the glory days. I don't want that to be the theme, and that's all we talk about, like, all the time.
No, there'll be good matches and good things and good angles and things.
Yeah.
You have to look at where we're at to see where we get to.
It's kind of like when you look at, the Patriots. They were so good for 20 years, and then all of a sudden Brady leaves, and they kind of suck. When you're on top for as long as WWF was, like, if you look in the history of wrestling, there's spurts. It's up and down. It's a roller coaster. People like to say that now, and it's true to an extent. I'm still waiting for the roller coaster to go back up for the WWE anyway. But most companies don't experience a 7 or 8 year, 9-year run where they were making so much money hand over fist like they were with Hogan on top. And at some point, the bubble is going to burst, and you're going to have to go to the very, very bottom and build your way back up. And that's just what this is. This is like the reset button. And when WCW, they're spending money, they're bringing guys in. I mean, they're doing their thing. The roster pool isn't that huge at this point. I know guys are leaving, but look at the guys that are leaving. Martel's been there off and on for, 12, 13 years at this point. Earthquake had a long run of, 3 years. Like, he's done. He's a big guy. He needs a break. And Bossman, whatever the hell was going on in his head. So some of these guys are leaving, and they just need to recharge their batteries. As you see, some of them come back. By the end of 93, Martel's back. Earthquake comes and goes for the next 2 or 3 years until he gets the gig with WCW with Hogan. The perfect storm for AEW was all those guys being available and signed at the same time, so you can kind of start a company with those 5 people. This is the perfect storm of, okay, everybody that's left is on their last legs because they've been going at it for 3 or 4 years now. So it's like, okay, everybody's just going to go and we're going to restart, and these are the guys we're going with. So that's just... I
just don't know how you let it get as bad as it does, because the argument with Tom Brady is the only thing I can say about that is that's real life. When Tom Brady was gone, they no longer have Tom Brady, who I hate, by the way. So, and I'm defending him here. But I mean, once he's gone, he's gone. Here, you have the capability to tell any story you want. So,
do you?
Yeah, you do, because
you can.
You had to put, dude. There's 3 feuds. You can't tell me they couldn't have come up with something for somebody. We talk about some of the, I don't know, but somebody. I mean, I can book, I've sat here and fantasy booked enough to know that I can book anybody into a fucking something if I wanted to.
Because they're going to get over. I mean, like, if you just go back up to the roster and you look at it, each category, like, well, where do you go here? What do you want to do? Marty would have made sense, and it would have lasted longer if whatever happened after the Rumble didn't happen. So, I mean, it's just like a series of unfortunate events, and you can't. I know it's real life, but you can't lose all 5 of your guys on the offensive line and then trot 5 new guys out there, and all of a sudden you're going to be just as good as you was a week ago. You can't just lose guys like the Mountie, who's been established for 2 years. You can't lose a Bulldog, a Warrior, who's your former champions, Hell, he got fired after he lost the belt. Like, you lose the belt and then he's gone. Nails is another story, but Hogan's already gone. I know he's coming back, but he's been gone for a year now or 8 months. So, I mean, your bread and butter is gone. Yeah, you can book anybody. You have the ability to do that, and you have the ability to write whatever story you want. But it has to work, and it has to get over. And you can't just pick anybody to replace a Bulldog and a Warrior or a Mountain.
No, but I look at these house show matches. You can't tell me they can't come up with some better opponents for some of these guys. I mean,
I think they should have went to one show, like, an A-team, and that's it, and put your big names against each other.
I think by this point, they were doing just, one show for most of the time.
Yeah.
They make mistakes. Here's another mistake. Bam Bam Bigelow's back, but it's Vince's fetish. Oh, they got to fight big guys, pal. You saw what that match with Boss Man looks like at Royal Rumble. And for all of January here, we have Bam Bam working either the Boss Man, or this couldn't have been nowhere near as good, Typhoon. Bam Bam's going over the Boss Man and Typhoon into house shows all January. I would have gave Bam Bam somebody he could throw around, somebody look more impressive. It's Vince's fetish. It's bad booking. Like Bam Bam versus Owen, or Bam Bam versus just another, guy like that he can look impressive with. I can't imagine how terrible the Bam Bam Typhoon match is. And I'm sure that's on Coliseum Video somewhere, or it was on a Mania exclusive or something like that. So I'm sure I'll come across it eventually, but I don't want to, but I'm sure I will. We look at The Undertaker. He was supposed to be working with Nails. This is no fault of his own. Gonzalez isn't here yet. And they go back to guys that he feuded with before, which makes sense. But these guys are basically job guys by this point because of Vince, the way he booked them. He didn't have to book Papa Shango into, all we've seen is him lose. So we go into January, supposed to be Taker and Nails on the house shows. This is actually a step up. I mean, wrestling-wise, Taker and his buddy Papa Shango. And then Shango gets a separated shoulder, and he's out till the Rumble, which is, everybody always wonders, why did Papa Shango come in and go out so fast in the Rumble match? He had a separated shoulder, and he wasn't even really cleared to work, but they kept him in the Rumble match, maybe for a payday, maybe because they wanted that, name value, like another guy. But that's why Papa Shango comes in early in the match and goes out quick, is he's really shouldn't even have been in the ring. So we got Taker over Shango for the first half of January, and second half of January, it's Taker over the Berserker till Berserker gets injured also. So Taker's working guys he's worked with before, so they're feeding him big guys that had, established, and he's going over guys, but it's nothing new. So it's like a rehash of matches I've already seen at the house show before. Money Incorporated are working with the Nasties on the house shows, which makes sense. Is it going to draw you anybody, is anybody going to pay tickets to go see that? Probably not, but that belongs on the house show. That is really only your two top tag teams outside of the Steiners, who are still getting established as a team in the WWF, or the 10 people that don't know who they are from WCW. So they're squashing Dwayne Gill and Barry Hardy on the undercard. Money Inc. are going over the Nasties. So the Nasties are doing the job. It's obvious, the pecking order there. Yoko is squashing the Boss Man, squashing Earthquake in short matches, and squashing Randy Savage. I don't know if it's a squash, but it wasn't. I know the reports of the matches, all these matches are very short. So I don't know that he squashed Randy Savage, but he was beating Randy pretty fast. So Yoko's beating all these guys, so he's clearly already getting the push. Quake comes back to work the Rumble match, so he's doing jobs for Yoko that week going into that at the house shows. And before that, it's Boss Man doing the jobs on the way out. Savage doing the jobs basically on his way back to the commentary table. So they're really pushing Yoko there with some established talent, which that makes sense too. So these last, couple matches make sense to me. Money Inc., the Nasties, the matches Yoko's having. And then Mr. Perfect over Razor Ramon by countout until Razor blows his knee out. And so he gets replaced by Doink, who hadn't been working the house shows yet. It was kind of premature. They didn't want him in the ring yet, but they needed somebody to replace Razor. That's how depleted the roster is. Oh my God, we have nobody to work the semi-main event of our house show. Razor's out. We got to pull the fucking clown out of the crowd and put him on the house shows before he even turns heel, or at least before he even wrestles on TV. He's already in the semi-main events of the house shows. Then you get the two, big payoff matches. Shawn going over Marty and basically what is practice matches, if you want to call them that, for their upcoming match at the Royal Rumble. And I don't know if you've, heard the story or not about the agents. I don't know which agent it was, if it was Lanza or whoever. They watched the match and they called Vince and sold him on the match for the Rumble. Not saying it wasn't already booked, but they told him, oh my God, that was the greatest match I've ever seen. And, you got to put this on the pay-per-view. It's going to be he didn't use these words 5-star, but basically it's going to be, the greatest match of all time. Unbelievable. That's what the agents did. They would call Vince and tell him their thoughts and report everything that was going on backstage and in the ring and whatever. If somebody was getting lazy, if somebody's putting on a great match or whatever. So Vince, that's another reason why they had issues at Rumble. Vince was expecting this classic and got, an average match between Shawn and Marty. But by all accounts, Shawn over Marty every night on the house shows in January leading up to the Rumble as they practiced, quote unquote, practiced the match for the Rumble, even though it really wasn't a practice because the entire idea of the Rumble match was different and slower paced than what they were doing on the house shows. And then, of course, Bret Hart, early on, at least in January, going over Ric Flair every night. They even did the Iron Man match the one night, 60-minute Iron Man match. I think that was in Boston, but I'm not sure. And that's where we're at house show-wise, though. So, on top, pretty decent stuff. Shawn, Marty, Bret, and Flair. But outside of that, man, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to sum it up.
And I used to go to all the house shows during this era when it was like Shitsville because it was easy to get tickets. I'm not saying they were cheaper, but they weren't very expensive back then anyway. But it was easy to get them. Like I had better seats. And I can't tell you I remember any of these matches. So if they came to town around this time, I must have even said, nah, none of this really. I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't want to see Shawn and Marty or Bret and Flair, but I know I never saw any of this. So I must have missed this tour through my area if they did come through in this era, this period. I don't remember any of this. That's where we are house show wise. And as we finish up, I made a note of January tryouts. That's what I'm going to do each month. We do a month of the WWF is look at all the guys who got tryouts and see who made it, who didn't. And funny enough, none of these guys make it, Steve, but we'll look at the names anyway real quick. Scott Putski, the son of Polish Power Ivan Putski. Scott does get a little run there during that light heavyweight time period, even though he's jacked out of his gills and doesn't look like a light heavyweight. Blows out his leg and never to return there. Think he does some jobs in WCW after that, maybe. Scott Putski, Bill Irwin, which surprised me. I didn't remember that, but he actually makes it to TV. I posted that on YouTube. I think I posted it on Twitter too, a match with Bill Irwin and El Matador, where Tito actually picks up the win, while Bill Irwin gets a shot here in January 93, long before his goon period in 96. Horace Hogan in WCW. Basically, as a favorite of Hulk Hogan, as you might imagine, Horace Hogan gets a shot at working for the company, and he doesn't make it here. Back to FMW with Horace Boulder here in 1993. There was a couple of matches between two guys by the name of Cheetah Kid and Johnny Rotten. Any guess who those two guys are, Steve?
I got nothing for you, man.
Okay. Cheetah Kid is Rocco Rock. Johnny Rotten would become Johnny Grunge. And they actually worked each other over in Europe a bit, too. So just before Public Enemy, it's Cheetah Kid and Johnny Grunge trying out individually here in the WWF against one another. It's kind of funny. Double Trouble, who were the Undertakers in the old ICW, the Savoldi ICW, IWCCW, right before the Undertaker debuted. And Vince never went to check. And these guys were smart enough in 1990 to threaten to file a lawsuit at least by this period. And the deal was, well, we'll give you a job if you guys don't sue us for millions of dollars for the rights to the Undertaker name, because they were the Undertakers first. And so they gave him a shot as Double Trouble. They were two 500-pound guys, Steve. And they were about as bad as you can imagine. And they didn't last very long. They never made it to TV, to the best of my knowledge. But yeah, they worked a handful of house shows. And as far as I know, I don't think they ever got paid any royalty rights for the Undertaker name. So it is what it is. There was a Samoan who wrestled in California. That's all I got on this guy named the Volcano Kid. And needless to say, as I said already, none of these guys made it in the company here in January tryouts. And we talked about injuries too. Papa Shango separated shoulder. Berserker, undisclosed. I don't know what happened there. Razor blows out his knee, which a lot of people didn't know that going into the Rumble. Like, he went into the Rumble with an injured knee. So it's something interesting to look at when we're actually watching that match as part of the watch along. And then to close out the show, just some quick notes. Lex Luger on his way in, doing the Narcissist gimmick. That's the big build-up all month in January with Bobby Heenan. The USWA begins crossover storylines with the WWF, which is really fun. I'm looking forward to taking little small looks into that. Jerry Jarrett has been brought in to the company as, well, according to everyone except Bruce Pritchard, Jerry Jarrett was brought in and being groomed to replace Vince McMahon because everyone expected Vince to go to prison when the trial starts at the beginning of 94. So Jerry Jarrett was going to be groomed all year in 93 to replace Vince. Now, Bruce Pritchard swears that's not true, but every other human being on earth says the opposite. Plus, why the fuck else did Vince hire Jerry Jarrett, make him move to fucking Stanford, and teach him everything? And let him book Raw for the however many first months of the year. We'll be talking a whole lot more about Jerry Jarrett with the company. The Headlock on Hunger, the big Somalian Relief Fund thing they got coming up in January, we'll be discussing. And that's pretty much it. That wraps up this episode. Just kind of looking at some of the news and notes we'll be touching on moving forward here. So the next episode, Steve, is January 1993. We'll be talking all about everything leading up to the Royal Rumble, including the Raw that follows the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, good stuff. It has to be a top 5 Raw all time for me. The one right after Royal Rumble. I think it's, and I talk about it. I know I talk about it on the next show. I will. I recorded it after the Royal Rumble, and so when I watched the Rumble all the time, when I taped it from the pay-per-view, I watched the following Raw just to see it. So I was able to watch Mr. Perfect and Ric Flair all these years, but before the network, before other things and the internet, I was able to watch it. So definitely one of my favorite matches, one of my favorite shows all time, and the Raw, not Royal Rumble, but yeah. So I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, that Flair Hennig match, it just had a different feel for it than any WWF match I could think of prior to that. Very different everything. It was just it just didn't feel WWF. So in a good way. No,
absolutely. Yeah. And I just feel like, Ric Flair respected the shit out of Mr. Perfect, and he gave him one hell of a rub. I mean, that's really the best way to explain it. I mean, if you're going out of a company and going to another one, that's how you do it. That's exactly how you would do it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. So we're going to touch, and the way we're going to do it is we're going to cover Superstars, Wrestling Challenge, and Raw for every week. And then if anything's interesting or points and notes I want to make from the WWF Mania program or All-American or Spotlight or something like that, I will touch on it briefly. If there's an exclusive match that kind of caught my eye that I might put on social media for everyone to look at. But basically, we're going to be focusing on Superstars, Wrestling Challenge, both syndicated shows, and then the new Monday Night Raw program coming to the WWF here in January 1993. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Just everything's changing, and it's going to be fun. I think we're going to have a really fun time covering the year. Of course, in 2 weeks' time, after we do the January 93 show, we'll be doing the Royal Rumble Watch-Along, in which Steve will be giving away the autographed Bret Hitman Hart WWF 8x10. Very cool. Appreciate Steve doing things like that for the show and really for our followers. And all you guys have to do is follow us on Twitter at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. All you got to do is follow us, and you enter your chance to win the 8x10. So Bret Hart autographed 8x10. Thank you once again, Steve, for that.
Absolutely, man.
But yeah, that wraps up the show. We looked at the roster. It's scary. We saw the declining ratings. It's scary. The house show situation is scary.
Terrifying.
But yes. Okay. That's an excellent word to use for it. So things can't get much worse from here. And I don't think that they really do. I mean, here in 93, like there's a lot of bad, don't get me wrong, but yeah. I think we're going to find some fun things too. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the watch along. I haven't really sat through that Rumble in a while, and it should be a good time. So, till next week, Steve, appreciate you being here. I'm looking forward to talking all about January 1993 in the WWF. It's all the Razor and Brett stuff leading up to the Rumble, some fun Mr. Perfect Ric Flair stuff. A lot of good stuff there with some of the higher up talent anyway.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, guys. So thank you for listening to this initial debut episode of the WWF in 1993 here on the Memory Grenade. Of course, that's episode 33 overall. So episode 34 is January 93 in the WWF. Episode 35, the free prize giveaway, the Bret Hart 8x10 autographed, as well as the Royal Rumble watch along. So stay tuned. I want to thank you guys for sticking around while we were away I know I was down sick for a while, but I'm back, obviously up and running. Steve's here. He's doing a little better too. He had a little health issues as well. So it just kind of worked out that way to where we're both up and running again. So I'm looking forward, Steve, to next week and beyond here in the WWF 1993.
I don't like the way we had the break, but the break really helped. My batteries are recharged. I'm more energized and ready to go. That little break was nice, and I kind of needed it, I felt like, but we're back at it, and definitely look out for this one. And also, we're going to get those Monday Night Warfare shows kicking off again, too. So we got some more giveaways and things like that for those episodes as well. So stay tuned, folks. We're just getting started.
Absolutely. Just getting started here on the Grenade in January 1993. Like Steve said, always check out our other shows as well. Monday Warfare, The Battles Within. We're heading into the NWO era very shortly here. That's going to be interesting and fun. So until then, until next time, guys, I really appreciate you guys sticking around, waiting for the show to drop. It's dropped. I can't believe the numbers we did already since I put up the announcement of our return, the podcast we recorded over the weekend. The numbers today have been insane. So I can only imagine they'll be even better for this, I would hope. So I'm looking forward to it. And thank you guys once again here.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
We'd like to thank our loyal fan base of listeners as you guys continue to listen, download, and subscribe to shows. We can't thank you guys enough, and please continue to spread the word and retweet all the posts from our Twitter account to help the brand continue to grow. Of course, all of our shows are available on WrestleCopia.com, but you can also find The Grenade on all of your favorite podcast streaming apps. We're available on Apple, Spotify, Google Pod, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Amazon, iHeartRadio, you name it, and we're probably there. And a reminder that you too can win free prizes as listeners of The Grenade as part of our continuous free prize giveaway offers. All you have to do is follow us on Twitter at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. It's that simple. Be a follower of The Grenade and you're automatically entered in each and every free prize giveaway contest. As always, we encourage you to stop on over to our very own Patreon account, which you can find at patreon.com/WrestleCopia, where we offer an insane 14 tiers of goodies with prices available for everyone's price range. Prices start as low as $1, a $1 tier, to simply show your support of the fledgling podcast network. Or you can select our $5 tier, the All Access tier, which is always offering up rare goodies, as well as complete access to our entire watch-along series, featuring prior WWF and WCW pay-per-views and special events that make a great complimentary piece to our Monday Warfare podcast. We're also making our way through the entire WWF Coliseum video series as a watch-along project on Patreon. Other shows in our watch-along series include episodes of WWF Saturday Night's Main Event, the classic Steamboat vs. Ric Flair 1-hour match from Clash of the Champions 6, and so much more. We're always adding new content and shows to the watch-along series as part of the All Access tier over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That's $5 for the All Access tier. And again, we thank all of our loyal listeners for everything you've done. And with all of that out of the way, it's that time again. Time to say goodbye, but we will return next week. And until that time, this is Ray Russell, and for my co-host Steven Eckstadt saying, from pillar to post and coast to coast, you pull the pin, and we'll pick up the pieces right here on the Wrestling Memory Grenade. See you next week. Don't miss it. Be there.